Hope everybody is doing well. We've got another amazing edition of the Online Dinner Party, the show where we can sometimes bring in a single guest or sometimes multiple guests, and all along those lines, we have conversations about what's going on in the world and around the world. And definitely love having authors and people that are doing amazing work and all in that space on the show. And I've got another amazing guest today. I don't know how everybody else is doing, but the weather here in Durham, North Carolina is acting a little bit on the schizophrenic side and all along those lines because it was actually a couple of cool days and everything like that. But right now it is actually a little bit on the toasty side. I think it's probably in the mid 80s or something like that. And we might even be pushing near 90 later on in the week and everything like that. So the weather is going back and forth and can't make up its mind. Even though it's April, there were a couple of days where it was feeling more wintry than spring-like and everything like that. So we're going back and forth, but I think we're in a steady spring groove. I don't think we'll be having that many more, if any more, cold days, but I'm gonna find out where it is, where Miss Linda is, Dr. Linda, and all along those lines. I've also had the pleasure earlier today of, and was impressed with a immersive experience at the Cultural Arts Center that I work at, and all along those lines. So at certain schools, they will have people that will create these lovely immersive experiences, and you get to learn. And I was impressed with the kids that came. I think it was about maybe 12 to 15 kids and their counselor, and all along those lines. So they came to the Hayti Heritage Center, which is one of the other places that I work at, and got to hear some of the history talks about Duke and Duke's relationship, that being Mr. Duke, the founder of Duke University, and everything like that, to the Hayti Heritage Center, which is part of Black Wall Street. They also got to hear about the Piedmont Sound of Blues, got to talk to them about sports, because a lot of them were thinking that the Hurricanes are going to win, which is our hockey team, and all along those lines, and got to talk to them about urban renewal and a number of other things. But like I was saying, I was asked some very good questions by these kids. One of the kids asked me if any of these great developments in our urban community as part of Black Wall Street came to Raleigh, which is our state capital. And I was glad to tell them that they did. And they were also wondering if any of the businesses were still around. And right now it's primarily the churches, maybe a couple of the funeral homes, and then maybe one or two other businesses. Unfortunately, the African-American newspaper has shut down, and a lot of the other parts of the Black Wall Street, including one of the financial institutions, is no longer in existence. I think North Carolina Mutual went into foreclosure or doesn't exist the way that it used to, and everything like that. But Mechanics and Farmers, which is the African-American bank, it does still exist. So I get a chance to talk to them about that as well. And they were also wondering if any of the people went to work at American Tobacco, not the American Tobacco as we know it, which is now kind of a destination of a few restaurants, and they also have concerts out there as well, and a couple of other things that are going on in that space, including in some corporate offices. But the businesses, the cigarette businesses like Liggett and Chesterfield, did exist, and some of the people in the African American community did go to work at that place. So I was just impressed with the conversations that the kids were having and everything like that. So I'm going to bring in Dr. Linda Silbert and see what she's got to say about how she's feeling about the young people. And I know she's done a lot of work because, as some people know, because I don't hide it in my own presentation and all along those lines, I was diagnosed with dysgraphia, which means that me and left and right are not the best of friends, and all along those lines. But I wasn't diagnosed till well after I had gotten out of college and out of high school and my own grade school environment, and all along those lines. And unfortunately, that might be the experience of others as well. So I'm curious to hear some of Dr. Linda Silbert's thoughts about how sometimes these things aren't discovered till you're well into your adult years. I want to say that I'm in my about to be mid 60s, because I'll be 65, not this year, but next year, and everything like that. So I'm 64, but I do remember, like, I want to say maybe late 20s or early 30s was when it was diagnosed, ironically, by going to get some testing done around work at Goodwill and everything like that. So that's when they finally did some testing. They're like, "You've got dysgraphia." And I'm going like, I know I've got a sorry handwriting, but I didn't know that I actually had a name for my ailment until I was well into my adult years and all along those lines. I'm gonna bring in Dr. Linda Silbert and hear some of the things that she's been finding out in her own research and everything like that. So glad to have you here, Dr. Silbert. Like I said, I forget where you are and everything, and whether the weather is being as schizophrenic there as it is here and everything like that. But we've been having some very interesting and bizarre weather, but it's always good to have conversations with people that are experts and all along those lines. So I love having that on the Online Dinner Party and also on World Edition and some of the other shows that we do here on the Pod TV. So share a little bit about how you're doing. I know that I just heard your husband saying he's going jogging, and it'll be a great day for jogging or a great day for bird watching. Because I was just talking to a friend of mine, and I get this app called Merlin, which lets you identify the birds and everything like that. And it was telling me that, because I got an alert, that today is going to be a great migration day for the birds. So they're going to be flying back home, and since it's spring and everything like that. So they're saying that, this weekend, if you want to go birding, you might see millions of birds up in the sky. And I know even when I went to the Cultural Arts Center that I work at, I noticed some birds that were out there flying, hawks and robins and sparrows, and there are a lot of others. So, but you might see those like lines of birds that they are, whether they're flying north for the winter, or whether they're flying south for this time of the year, or whether they're flying away from us when it gets cold and everything like that, probably flying deeper south and everything like that, that this is a peak time to go birding and everything like that. So I don't know if you go bird watching. I did hear your husband say that he was getting ready to go jogging, so maybe he's going to see some nice birds or some nice other animals when he's out and about. So share with us a little bit about your book and the research that you've been doing around this very important topic, which is dysgraphia and the impact that it has on the students and just life in general.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me on here. Yeah, I just came out with a book. It's the second edition. The first one came out in 2007. And this is Why Good Kids Get Bad Grades.
Right.
And it's what parents need to know and what parents need to do. And there are so many reasons, and so many undiagnosed reasons, just like you. Exactly. Right. I've been in this business about 50 years. And so my husband also he's a retired physics teacher. His doctorate's in physics, and mine is in educational counseling. And I was finishing up an entire master's in reading, lost the credits, only had to make 6 more, but I lost them because I waited too many years. And I ended up getting almost the full amount, another master's, and then a PhD in counseling, because I realized when kids are struggling in school, it's not always academic. It's not, what's wrong with them, and the parents are panicked. Everyone is panicked. The child feels horrendous because they know something's wrong and everyone's staring at them. And so I wrote a book. The first one, as I said, was in 2007. We now made it double the size. Why Good Kids Get Bad Grades. And we doubled the size because we included all different types of ways of helping them, all the study skills they need, time management they need. I talked about what you mentioned when you wrote to me about, I call it the 3 shuns, the poor kids that suffer from lack of motivation, disorganization, and procrastination. And so we just go into all of this. And we also included this time what happened because of the pandemic, and what has happened to all these kids because of social media. It's another world, but the same child. Children have not changed, basically. The world has, but the children are still basically the same.
You bring up a lot of different and interesting questions, and I definitely want to get to those and everything like that. One, just out of curiosity, because my mother was a guidance counselor and everything like that. So I was wondering what led you to want to get into that field and everything like that, because Mom went on to do a lot of work in the world of foundation. She was actually the first president of the Golden Leaf Foundation and all along those lines, which is some of the tobacco settlement money, and retired about 10 years ago and is enjoying retirement and enjoying being one of the matriarchs of the family and everything like that. But one of her first jobs that I don't really remember, because I would have been an infant and everything like that, but one of her first jobs out of college in the early 60s was a guidance counselor in rural, it's not that rural now because it's a suburb of our state capital, Zebulon, and everything like that. But she was a guidance counselor, and part of that was she wanted to encourage kids and came from a family of educators. So that's part of the reason she got into guidance counseling, and some of her siblings became actual teachers. But what got you and wanted to be a guidance counselor?
Okay. I always laugh. I think I was in 4th grade, and I was sitting in class, and I wanted to be a teacher so badly, and thinking I would not treat that child that way if I was the teacher. I was trying to think of what I would be doing. Once I got into teaching, I taught 3rd grade, And then when I went for the master's, as I said, I was going for reading,
Mhm.
got 6 credits away from finishing. We moved. I figured I'll go back eventually, finish up the 6 credits, lost them. They only gave me back 6 credits. So at that point, I had already started working with children with dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia. And I started working with them. I was going into Manhattan. I live an hour north of Manhattan.
Okay.
So I was going there because there was so much research on dyslexia and dysgraphia. And I started to realize I'm not going to get the master's again in reading. I was only 6 credits away. I had plenty of credits in reading. I realized when a child is struggling in school,
Mhm.
they needed counselors. That's
Right.
how I went to become a guidance. And it's funny, my sister's also a guidance counselor. She retired also. But I went into it because I saw it's the whole family system.
Mhm.
It's not just the academic. It's not that piece. And the whole focus of my book is parents are very quick to look at grades. Oh, they
Right.
don't do well in reading. They don't do well in math. They got an A, they got a B. Don't look at the grades.
Mm.
You have to look at what's causing the grade.
Right.
It doesn't matter if they're not doing well. Don't get angry. And so many parents start lecturing and yelling, and they take away things, and that's it. The phone, and they take all these things away. Hug your child. They get a
Right.
bad grade. They want that gold star just as much as you do. They want it more
Mhm.
than you do. So don't become their adversary. Become their ally. Go
Right.
over and say, "Wow, you got a C, you got a D. Wow, you failed that." And they go, I know, teacher hates me anyway. That's what most of the kids always say to me because I've had a private practice for, as I said, 50 years.
Right.
And so every child, I think every child says to me, "Oh, teacher hates me." And I
Right.
say to them, "Did they actually tell you that?" And they go, "No, I just know it. They just hate me." Okay, that's the reason they're failing. But I say to them, I don't care if you have 100 or if you have a 0. Let's figure out who you are and what's happening. You have options. I talk a lot about my TIONs. You have options. Do you have to fail? They go, I don't know. Can you go to your mom? Can you go to your dad, the teacher? And they usually will come up with someone. This one
Mhm.
hates me. No, I would never. No, my dad will go ballistic. No, my mom. No, she's going to just start yelling. I'm lazy. Well, grandma would help me.
Right.
And they do come with, just sit down. And the whole focus of the book is I give you all strategies, what to do. There's a million different reasons kids don't do well, and figure out what it is. If your car is broken, you can't fix it. Changing the tire is not going to help. It's like when the kids are failing and the parent said, well, I took away the phone. Well, how's that going to help? Did
How's
you
it
try
gonna
to
help?
figure out what's going on? I mean, you probably do a dysgraphia.
Yeah, but
That's
since you say that and everything, I just wanted to get to some of the things that I was thinking about and all along those lines. Because
yeah,
one thing that I was thinking that you were bringing this up is I know that my brother works with a lot of at-risk youth. He's worked with a number of different agencies all along those lines. And I know that too often we are in this habit of wanting to categorize people and all along those lines. I'm not a big fan, and I will sometimes use it, even though I'm not a big fan of it, of using the word at risk and everything like that. And I think that sometimes we use that word, we're almost like creating a self-fulfilling prophecy and all along those lines. So I just wonder your thoughts around that, because it seems to me that sometimes we try to put the kids in a box, and I know sometimes you might even have them go into like special schools. I know here in Durham, North Carolina, where I'm at, there's a school that all the troubled kids are supposed to go to. Not all of them, but quite a few of them go to. So you have these kids that are all together that were in quote unquote troubled environments. But aren't we kind of creating an environment where we're creating a, like that, like I said earlier, self-fulfilling prophecy, where if you tell a kid he's bad, he's going to automatically think he's bad.
oh my goodness, yes. Yes. I say to them, they say, well, my child knows that I think they're smart. I said, did you tell them?
Right,
Well, no. I said, but you keep telling them they're lazy. Yeah,
right,
you keep telling them all these other things that you're this, you're not motivated. You manage to say all these things, and to say to a child, you're at risk.
hmm,
That's an awful thing to say to someone, because they have to find out why they're at risk. They're
Right.
not doing the homework. Why? And they say to me, the parents go, yeah, but they didn't hand anything in. Or the teacher will say it to me. They never hand anything in. I said, there's a reason. It could be emotional. It could be that they're lonely at home. It could be they're exhausted. Some kids don't sleep. And the sleep is a real problem nowadays.
Mhm.
They could be, I mean, now with social media, they can be addicted
Mhm.
to social media. And the pandemic is affecting kids right now because during the pandemic, when a baby was born, the
Mhm.
first thing, the language part of the brain develops.
Right.
Okay. That's how you learn to read. It has to go to the language part of the brain. Dyslexia is not reading backwards.
Right.
Dyslexia is having trouble putting a sound with an image.
Right.
If you're an infant during COVID and everyone's wearing masks and you can't hear, those children didn't, many of them, the part of the brain that develops the language part may not have developed right. There were children in kindergarten, first grade, when COVID hit, who needed help so desperately, they didn't get it. Okay,
Yeah.
so where are those children now? So they never got the foundation, that foundation they needed. There were kids in second, third grade that needed help. They didn't get it. Okay, so what happened to those children? There's an epidemic now of all these grades going down because they don't have the foundation. And
Yeah.
a lot of it is going back to the pandemic, and I never hear anyone talking about it.
No, they don't talk about that at all. I'm glad that you're bringing this up and everything. Way back in the 70s and 80s and everything like that, one of the things that we did hear people talk about a lot, and I'd love to hear your thoughts around this, is the notion of the latchkey kid and everything like that, because they would see, and you kind of mentioned earlier, whether it was social media now or the television, back in the day, that they became almost like the babysitters, because a lot of people were in two-family households or even single-family households, and maybe the mother or the dad had to work, so the kid was pretty much on their own and they would come home to their own environment. One of the things that I joke with my parents about and all along those lines, and I kind of mentioned it on some past shows, is my parents had a radio station, a community radio station. I love that community radio station. It helped me get into media and some of the things that I do now and everything like that. But I also know that because it was a entrepreneurial business, and I'm not saying anything wrong with the entrepreneurs and everything like that. They were being entrepreneurial. I have other friends that even currently are entrepreneurial and everything like that. But sometimes that business became the third child and everything like that.
Mhm.
So there were
Mhm.
times that I know that I'm glad that they tried to encourage me to get involved with the radio station. So I would get involved with the radio station and would go to the radio station. We even had a show kind of like Zoom where teenagers would be doing the music and the hip hop of the day and everything like that. So the early parts of hip hop existence, since hip hop is 50 years old, or actually more than 50 years old and everything like that. But I do remember having like that engagement with I did and everything. But I do know that not everybody had parents that were as encouraging that way. And even to me, to some degree, felt like that radio station was a third child, because I do have a younger brother who's got my two nephews, because I don't have any kids of my own and everything like that. But I just wanted, can you speak to how the latchkey kid environment might have also created some educational problems as well, whether that was in the 70s, the 80s, or I would even argue the 90s, and maybe even now. There might be some people now that are doing latchkey.
I love that question. I was a latchkey kid because my parents actually opened a toy store when I was 5.
Right.
Okay, so I was now with aunts and uncles, and the uncle, one of them lived with us. He was a dentist in town, but he used to pick me up from school. I was sitting in his waiting room. I was going, but I always felt I was part of that family.
Mhm.
And I would go to that store and I would ask people. My mother would say to me, just say to them, may you help them. And then I learned how to wrap gifts. My sister and I were sitting there. We both laugh about it today. And we said, boy, do we know how to wrap a gift. We know, like, the most important thing, that doesn't matter if the parent is working. You have to be part of the family.
Right.
There are parents who are home,
Mhm.
but the child feels like they're growing up watching the family. They're on the outside looking in.
Right.
Are you your child's ally?
Right.
That is so important. So many parents become their adversary. You didn't clean up your room. You didn't do this. Why'd you want? The child wasn't asked to be born.
Right.
You have this child, and so many parents have a fantasy of some kid. And I'd say to them sitting in front of me, I say, You have a fantasy of another child. This is your child. This is a
Mhm.
great kid. And now let's figure out what to do to work with them. And sometimes they'll say, "Oh, they do this." I say, "Well, it's usually genetic." And then
Mhm.
I mean, that's your child. You
Mhm.
wanted that child. Take care of them and
No,
make them feel part of that family. So I
no, that
was
makes,
in a latchkey situation. I thought of it years later and I
mhm.
said, I think I was a latchkey kid. I didn't even know it. I was being pushed from this one to this cousin to this aunt and uncle, but having family nearby was wonderful.
Yeah, having that family structure is
That
very important.
family was critical.
Yeah. Speaking of the family, one of the things that I talk about on this show is during the pandemic, a friend of mine who lives in California created this thing called the IPC, called the Funky Eye Puppets. IPC is his name because it stands for eye pain creatures and everything like that. But one thing that he would do when he was teaching us and having us do this improv audio, like audio dramas and everything like that, was he would tell us to get out of our heads because a lot of times when you're an adult, you are so busy lifing that you're not thinking about that feeling of play and everything like that. So I was really impressed that your husband was getting ready to go jogging because that to me is a form of play and everything like that. But I was just wondering, do you think that we as a society have gotten away from the notion of play and that we tried to suppress play in our kids? Because right now, I remember growing up that we would go and play pickup games of basketball, maybe a pickup game of baseball and something like that in the rural areas with our friends and peers and everything like that. Of course, you might even be playing some of the games of the day like jacks and card games and things along those lines. But there was a sense of community. And I know that even now the kids don't seem to, in my mind, have as much of that. I was really impressed with the intellect of the kids that came. But Cary Academy is a top school and it's in one of our suburbs and everything like that. But like I mentioned earlier, I was impressed with these kids because they were asking good questions. And these are kids that are probably 16, 17. So they're the older end of the spectrum in terms of kid years and everything like that. But I was just wondering your take on the notion of play, because it's something I talk about on this show a lot, is I sometimes feel that we have suppressed play and gotten away from the notion of play being a good thing.
Mike, you give such, I mean, great questions. Um, I actually, I have play and fun in this book, chapter, chapter. Few places. First of all, the kids have to come home from school. They have to
Mhm.
go play. The play is part of child development. That is the healthiest part. Sitting and doing homework, more schoolwork, sitting still. The brain's first developing. Play, free play.
Mhm.
Teams are great. That's wonderful. But when you go outside into a neighborhood or there's a group of kids and you have to organize, you have to decide, make decisions. That's part of brain development.
Right.
Fabulous. I have a whole chapter called Needs. The needs have to be met for a child to succeed in school. They can't be hungry. They
Mhm.
can't be tired. They can't be stressed. And they need fun
Right.
every day. I even say every day at dinner. That's one of my suggestions. Who wants to come up with a joke today to make everybody laugh? You have to laugh. You need fun. So play and fun is critical. And they're not, I don't see that many kids. They would come to me for my appointment to meet with me. Then they were going to soccer practice. Then they were going to baseball practice. Then to the therapist. Then they were going there. It's like I always laugh that sometimes they say your child's doing fine. You're suffering from professional parent syndrome. This is
Mhm.
not a project. This is not. And make sure that you have fun as a family. Do something. You have to, as a family, as a school, as a community.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm glad you said that because sometimes the play seems like it's almost forced play and everything like that. Because
Yes,
I'm
it's
not knocking
fun.
soccer. I'm not knocking
Yeah,
the organized play, whether that's soccer or football, or we're in
yes.
baseball season now and everything like that. But it does seem like, or even gymnastics for the young ladies and even sometimes the young guys as well. But sometimes it seems like it's more play for the parent sense and less play for the young child sense. I live in an apartment complex and everything like that. And there's a
Mhm.
young lady that I am really impressed with what I've seen. And I've seen this now the last 3 or 4 days, but she's apparently probably over the holidays, like maybe back in last Christmas, got a bicycle. And of course she couldn't ride it in the winter because even though we don't have harsh winters, it's still probably too cold to be out there driving in a coat. But the last couple of weeks, whenever I go out, particularly like after this show, I'll probably go out and she'll probably be pedaling around the neighborhood in the parking lot and everything like that. But that is a form of play, and I'm just always impressed when I see this young lady. She's of Hispanic origin, and she's probably like, I would guess about 8. I'm not always great at guessing ages, even women's ages, but I'm guessing she's probably like somewhere between 8 and 9. But she's just having a great time on that bicycle and enjoying riding around in a confined neighborhood that's safe. Because she's not going to go all the way down to the other end of the complex because her parents probably don't know people down there. But they're still in this neighborhood that she's close by because she's actually in the back part of my apartment complex. But it's just fun seeing her ride around that bicycle and really enjoying that bicycle. And it's something that she seems to be enjoying. And it's not so much that organized kind of play that sometimes we get our parents into. There's that whole notion of like, I mean, my brother was a coach for soccer and everything like that. But sometimes some of the play seems to be more for the parent than it is for the kid, is what I'm trying to say.
No, excellent. I mean, no, and people don't think of it. People just don't think of it. They have play dates, but it's very organized. Everything's organized. But thank goodness, my own children, my grandchildren, just my living room is just filled with toys and stuff, and you can step over them. Just the play is very, very important.
No, I think play is very much important and everything like that. How important do you think it is for different generations to engage with each other? I mean, I went to school with Dr. Rivers, who until recently was coaching the Milwaukee Bucks and everything like that. We went to Marquette together. And I was reading an article yesterday where he was saying that he didn't think he'd go back into coaching. And he's coached several folks. He won a championship with the Boston Celtics, and he's definitely played himself like with the Atlanta Hawks, one of the teams in Los Angeles. I think it was the Lakers and everything like that. But one of the things he said he wanted to do, and he's maybe about my age, so he might be a year older. So if I'm about 64, he might be 65. Was he wanted to spend time with his grandkids? Now his kids themselves I think one of them is a volleyball player. The boys played basketball themselves. One of them may have gone into corporate America versus playing basketball and everything like that. But he wanted to spend time with the grandkids. I personally think that just because I know Doc to some degree that he might get bored and wind up wanting to get back into coaching or something like that. But I was just glad to hear him say that he wanted to spend that quality time with his grandkids. So he's had enough of the coaching and enough of the babysitting grown adults, but he wanted to spend time with his grandkids. So that to me was a good win on his part. Like I said, we've lost touch. I don't talk to him all that much. I've got friends that still are in touch with him. But I was just wondering your thoughts about the importance of having that intergenerational connection. So not just you, but you kind of alluded to it earlier, but your grandkids, your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, and stuff like that.
I had it, and my children, we live 3 hours away from our daughter, and yet those 2 boys are now 22, living in Manhattan. So now we see them much more often. But we saw them a lot, and they'd stay here during vacations. Or my daughter's, she's a professor. She had to work, and my son-in-law had to work. They would stay here for the week. And just knowing, I mean, and I talked to them about it. They just waited to come here. And it's just so important for the children. My 2 little ones are now 9 and 6. Those 2, I mean, they come in the house, and one of them is actually, when they were little, they went and bent down and kissed the carpeting. They kissed the floor when they walked in because it's gonna be fun.
Right.
I believe, I remember we were sitting and playing double solitaire, then having jigsaw puzzles out all the time. Always had a jigsaw puzzle. My whole company, I work with dyslexic children. I created an entire company of card games for them to learn to read. They play Go Fish, Memory, War. They play bingo. They learn to read by playing, because I'll never forget their children. And one of the mothers was standing at the door, and this little boy standing, 7 years old. And he said to me, if you tell me that I have to read or write anything, I'm not coming in there. So I said, would you play a game? And he goes, yeah. And he walked in, and I grabbed index cards, and I started making up a game of all the CVC words. And by the time the mom walked in, he read the words. Wow. And she said to him, Peter, you learned how to read. He goes, we didn't do reading. We just played. And it hit me, and I started, and now we sell nationwide. You just go to our website and you pick, we have over 200 card games, and each one, they're $12.95 a game. That's it. You don't need these fancy reading programs. It just gets that anxiety down, and it gets their focus there. They want to win. Their children, they want to play, and they're having fun. So
I
I
was
believe very strongly in that.
Yeah, I was laughing as you were saying that. But I was laughing for a couple of reasons. One is I remember, like I said, my nephews are 16 and 17, about to be 17 and 18 in August. But I remember when they were first playing soccer. So this was probably a decade or so ago and everything like that. And I remember that one of them was playing and they were playing soccer and everything like that. And they started to, and I think they were winning, but they started to go on this temper tantrum and everything like that. And I think I was there. My my uncle and aunt were there. I want to say that both of my parents were there because they're divorced and separated and everything like that. And their other halves, at least dad's other half, I can't remember, mom's other half was there and everything like that. But they were always enjoying the game. And we're also there going like, why are you having a temper tantrum? And it was because he looked at us and in his tears, he's like, because I don't want to quit playing, because he was having so much fun enjoying the playing and everything like that. It didn't matter whether they were winning or losing. I think they were actually winning the game and everything like that, but he just was having a temper tantrum at that particular age of around 8 or 9 because he was engaged in the game and didn't want the game to quit, because like anything else, things have to end as well, but he didn't want it to stop. So that's why he was having the temper tantrum. And on the flip side of that, that same nephew, or it might have been his younger brother and everything like that, I remember that we were playing, and you're talking about games, and I come from a family of gamers. Like, we used to play Scrabble regularly. We play Spinners now, which is kind of like dominoes and everything like that. So we have a family gathering. There's probably going to be some games involved. I think Spinners is the big one now and everything, even though we've done Taboo and other games like that. But I just remember us playing Spinners, and I want to say that he won, meaning one of the kids won, even though it's usually adults and even people older, like in their 80s and stuff, that are involved in the games and everything like that. And my brother's in his 50s, but I want to say he won. And this maybe was like a year or two ago and everything like that. And everybody was trying to get him to play again. And he learned one of the early lessons of gamemanship, which is that if you have victory, sometimes it's best to leave a victor. So he was like, I don't want to play anymore. I won. I don't need to play anymore because I've already won my game. Because everybody tried to get him back.
So important. Because I created a whole company based on games. I did research on using games. Right. And the research shows that the socialization,
right,
they learn sportsmanship, they learn to think, because they have to strategize to figure out a play. I remember playing Scrabble, you said, with my 2 grandsons when they were about 10. And one of them kept winning. And we're both sitting there going, where are we getting the blanks from? He took all the letters and turned them over, and he thought that was a riot, that he had all the blank letters. And we didn't realize it, that he was taking all the letters and turning them over. And of course, I mean, but we could all just laugh that he could do something so quirky. And to this day, we bring it up. Remember the time when you tricked us when playing Scrabble? But it takes all the generations and just brings it all together. That's the part that's so beautiful, playing games like that.
No, I think that's very much important and everything like that. I know, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, and it happens for both adults and kids and everything like that, is how much do we have these self-defeating attitudes? Because one of the things that I talk about on this show and other shows that I've been part of is this notion of the imposter syndrome. That's what us adults call it and everything like that. But it's that self-defeating belief and everything like that. I know that whether it's been in my relationship life or whether it's been in even jobs, because I was actually talking to a coworker today and they were asking me if I was going for a job, and I'm still thinking about it. It's a job in the arts management and everything like that. But I know that sometimes I will have such deep conversations with myself that by the time I make up my mind, whether it's going into a relationship, because I'm still in that single space, or whether it's going into a work environment, those opportunities have left and everything like that. So how much is this a problem in education where we are in some ways encouraging almost self-defeating behavior and everything like that? Because I think sometimes we have self-defeating behavior and we don't discourage it. In some ways, we might even encourage it. So I was just wondering your thoughts on this, because I do know that it's a popular topic even on this show, is how we can be self-defeating, even the way that we indoctrinate, for lack of a better term, our kids and those that are kids that we influence. Like I said, I don't have any kids, but I consider myself a mentor to many. And I think that mentorship is very important. So while I may not have any physical kids that were birthed from me and a significant other, I know that there are a lot of folks that even to this day will call me Baba Mark, which is an expression for those that are into the African culture. And my friend Baba Chuck, we used to be in that. He was a major person that brought African dance here and everything like that. And people would call him Baba Chuck and everything like that, which is like father. It's another word of saying an elder and everything like that. So how important is it for us to have encourage both the mentorship aspect? So it's really two questions: to encourage mentorship from not just our immediate family, but also get away from these self-defeating behaviors.
Those type of behaviors, I literally did my doctoral dissertation on the antecedents of self-esteem in children. How do you develop self-esteem so you don't feel that constant feeling of defeat?
Right.
What is it? What creates that feeling of? So the first 7 chapters of the book are about that, because that is, you hit upon something. It is critical. And that child has to know, just like the adult, that, you know what, I've been here before, I've struggled before, and I made it. They have to get that foundation, but that happens, mommy and daddy. That's where it begins. And the person gets that feeling of self-worth. That child it's a perception. How do you perceive those significant others perceive you? It's a perception. And I say, because I say here that parents will say, I never said anything. And the child will sit in front of me and say, yeah, but you always roll your eyes. You always look over at daddy. They see every single thing you're doing. And that feeling develops, and it doesn't start till about 6, 7. Okay. And that's when it starts to develop, that feeling of self-worth. You know yourself. If you walk into a room and you think everyone in that room thinks you're God, that they just adore you, your feeling of self-worth is this high. That's self-esteem, and you don't feel defeated. I can do anything. You feel great. If you walk into a room and you go, oh my God, look at that, staring at my shoes. I guess I wore the wrong shoes. I don't know. And you just say, that self-esteem plummets. Okay. And so it all depends your perception. They maybe they never noticed your shoes. I mean, but it is your perception. So that feeling starts at childhood with mommy and daddy, goes to family members, grandma, grandpa, then to the teachers, the school, then to the peers. So if you have a strong foundation, you're going to know, you know what, I can do this. One of the best things you can ever tell someone, and I say it to all these kids, and they come to me and they're failing 3, 4 classes or whatever. And I say to them, you really come through though. How did you get that 90 last? Remember that time? And they go, oh yeah. I go, what did you do? Oh, I don't know. Okay. And one boy said to me, he said, actually, because they put me in a group, so everyone in the group was really smart, and we got a 90. I didn't really do that. So I said, but you were in the right group. So I said, make sure you pick the right group to be with. Okay. So it's just letting them know from childhood on that I think you're great. I know I can believe in you, and you always come through. And they love that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because you were saying that, I don't know, I was thinking about the kids that have gotten into the quote unquote wrong lanes and everything like that. But part of what happens, from my understanding, from talking to my brother and others that are in that field, is that they're looking for a sense of a family and a sense of being recognized for their skill sets and everything like that. So those kids that are getting involved in, say, and you mentioned being in New York and everything like that, if they're getting involved in gangs or some of that other things, it's not necessarily that they want to be part of the gang lifestyle and everything like that, because we know that can lead to prison and other bad things, but they are seeing that as their family, and also people that are recognizing their skill set. Because some of the best, I hate to put this way, because I've known some people in that lifestyle, but some of the best business owners, business people that I know in terms of like knowing business sense, in terms of like business skills, are people that are in that lifestyle, because they have to do that in order to sell whatever they're selling that is not quality products for the world, whether that's labor, of whether that's human capital, or whether that's the bad drugs and everything like that. But they develop business skills sometimes as strong as the owners of, say, a Kmart or something like that, but they develop these business skills.
And the whole thing, and we call it, I call it inflated self-esteem, because the drug dealer, their perception is their peers think they're great.
Right.
In that community, they feel, but they don't have a sense of responsibility.
Right.
They don't have a sense of knowing options. They
Right.
don't have a sense of trust.
Right.
But their self-esteem is inflated. When I give talks, I usually give this one story. This little mouse goes to the psychiatrist
Mhm.
and says, I am so afraid of the cat. I'm terrified of the cat. Well, the psychiatrist says, you're brave. You can do it. Just go out there. You will be fine. The mouse feels great, walks out of the office. A second goes by. The cat comes along, gulp. The mouse is gone.
Right.
The moral of the story was, don't build someone up with this inflated self-esteem.
Right.
Give them the skills they need. Give
Right.
them the skills so they can survive, and how you speak to them and what you do, so they get that sense of self-worth, and they'll get that sense of self-worth by achieving and sometimes failing. And that's okay
Mhm.
too, because you've
Mhm.
got options. What should we do then? It's not that you're a failure. That didn't do that well in chemistry. You didn't do that well in
Yeah.
geometry. It's okay.
Yeah,
And
there's
that
something that you're not going to do that well in. I know that when I was growing up, I mentioned the dysgraphia, and I don't know how it impacted some of my grades. Well, one, I know that we used to have those lovely, uh, like the cliff notes, but you also had like those little small notes that you would write your essays in and everything like that. So like the little small notebooks, I forgot what they were
the
called. They
little
were
blue books, the blue
the little blue
books.
book, thank you. The
Yeah,
little
the
blue
little
books and
blue
everything
books.
like that. So I'm convinced to this day that some of the teachers probably gave me good grades because not only did I have dysgraphia, but I don't have the best handwriting in the world and everything like that. So I'm convinced that some of the teachers probably saw some of the points that I was making in my essays, and I did make good points and everything like that. But they were also probably like, I'm not trying to figure out every word he said because this handwriting is so sorry that I'm just going to go ahead and give him a benefit of the doubt, for lack of a
Yeah,
better term, and
yeah,
everything like that. So I'm sure that there were some teachers that probably gave me the benefit of the doubt because of the handwriting being that poor.
yeah, yeah. But in those days, they really didn't understand it. They didn't
Right.
really know. They would have you rewrite it and then rewrite it and then rewrite it. They didn't understand what it meant, what dysgraphia meant, what
Mhm.
dyslexia meant. They didn't understand an ADHD. My
No,
husband that you saw before, he's got his doctorate in physics. And he said in first grade, second grade, he said he thought his last name was Sit Down. He said, because I couldn't stay in that seat. Every teacher was yelling, sit down. And so he said, but the teachers really didn't understand what was going on at that
yeah, they
point.
didn't understand because, like I said, I don't drive. I get around by mass transit. I was actually talking to a young lady that had spent time in Kenya and in India and other places around the world, but now she's at getting our doctorate here, and I think she travels by mass transit as well. But part of the reason that I will even tell people that I don't drive is because when I attempted to drive, the notion, and that's part of where dysgraphia comes in, the notion of left and right and me are not the best of friends. So I do know the difference between my left and my right, but that quick automatic reaction that you need when driving to make that turn isn't always as quick its mind as it might be in other people's mind and everything like that. So it takes me a little bit longer. It might even be a split second or a couple of split second difference and everything. But we know that in driving, that split second can make the difference between you turning the right way and you running into a parking sign and everything like
Yeah.
that. So that's why I let my getting around by driving and everything like that. But I know my mom has made the point, and I agree with her, that doesn't matter whether he's got dysgraphia or not. If there's a place that Mark wants to get to, he'll find a way to get there. If he really wants to get there and everything like that. So, like if I wanted to go to say the Kentucky Derby, this is a dream of mine to go that one day and everything like that. If I want to go to Miami, which I've been a couple of times, or even New York City, where you're at, I will find a way to get there, and I'll also find a way to get around. It might not be the more traditional way, but I will find a way to do it. So that's something that she has admired about me, is my persistence, for lack of a better term.
And acceptance.
And
Your
acceptance.
the acceptance, like, this is who I am.
Right.
I mean, that is everyone just knowing, you know what? And it's okay. It's
Right.
okay because you're surviving, and you're taking care of other people, and other people
Right.
look up to you. You're a role model.
Right.
That's really just wonderful.
Yeah. I'm going to switch to the other computer just really quickly and everything, so you may hear brief noise and everything like that. But I was just wondering, you mentioned earlier about the pandemic and all along those lines and how the pandemic has impacted people in that way. And I don't think that there's been enough research on that, even though some people are talking about how we're not seeing the same education that we used to in the pandemic era and everything like that. So you kind of touched on it, but can you explain the ways that teachers are having to adapt to new education in the pandemic era and everything like that? Because I don't know that everybody is understanding how the pandemic is impacting us.
The pandemic impacted in education tremendously. And I actually don't see that much out there either. Because I work one to one. I have a tutoring service and I have many, many, many tutors that work for us. And what has happened, the children, and they can be in high school, but it was only a few years ago, they were in middle school and they needed help. And the pandemic, they did not get the help they needed at that time. So the teachers now have classes that are 25, 30 kids in a class. We have too many kids in a class. Teachers, it's very difficult to teach. Okay. And you have kids in there that are struggling. And the writing, horrible. The writing, I mean, the teachers are tearing the hair out. They cannot write. They didn't during the pandemic. And then the social media started and the computers. I had a girl sitting here one day and it was 5 times 5. And she went, "Do you have a calculator?" And I said, 5 times 5? I'm not giving you a calculator. What is it? We'll figure it out. I'm not giving you a calculator. Well, what's happened because of the pandemic and because of social media and because of computers, kids can't write. They can't. Now, someone asked me, what about AI? I mean, that's just horrible. What is that going to do to education? The kid who's going to use AI to write every paper, they're going to cheat anyway.
Right.
The person who wants to cheat is going to cheat, no matter when or where or what. The kid who does not, and they want to develop their writing skills, they're going to respect where AI comes in, and they'll still develop their writing skills. Okay, so in the math, now the SATs, as part of the SATs, you can't use a calculator.
Right.
You have to know that math. So schools have to make sure that these kids get the writing, get the math, but they have so many kids that needed help and didn't get it during the pandemic. And it's almost impossible because everything takes money. It's money. And they need the extra teachers. That's what they need. They need more teachers.
Yeah, they definitely need more teachers, and the teachers don't get enough respect. And all along those lines, I know the teachers don't get paid nearly enough and everything like that. And that's one of the other issues that I know exists and everything like that, because we definitely got to find a way to get better pay for the teachers and everything like that, because a lot of times the teachers are not getting what they deserve either, particularly those that are doing the field like you are of special ed and everything along those lines. You mentioned things that have not been discussed that much in the past and everything like that. And I was wondering, I know a lot of people are diagnosed with autism and things along those lines. So are we seeing more kids with autism and on the spectrum than we used to and everything like that? Or is it just that it's being recognized more at this particular day and time? Because I know that there was a time that kids were just considered to be different, or they were considered to be hyperactive and everything like that. But now a lot of times that is diagnosed as a form of ADHD, which you mentioned earlier, or a form of autism and things along those lines. So is it that we are just having a better sense of what it is, or is it that there is actually an increase in it, or is it just that we have a better understanding of what it means to be autistic?
Okay. I can't really answer totally honestly. Is there more? I do not know.
Right.
But I do believe that it's diagnosed more. I think more. There were years ago they go, "Oh, the kid's a little quirky,"
Right.
or the kid can't sit still, or they have a lot of energy, or the whatever. They don't pay attention. Now there's a label. So many kids are being labeled. And I had a boy sitting with me one day tapping the table, and he goes, "I have ADHD, and no one will give me, my parents won't even take me to a doctor because my friend gets medicine and he's doing fine." And he's showing me, and I looked at him and I said, "Stop shaking. I don't care if you have ADHD or you don't have it. You got to still take the same test. So don't worry about it." So the kids are learning that if I have this, then I can get this, or have this, or this way they have a label. I'm fine. No one can say I'm lazy, because they'd rather have someone say you have something than say you're stupid or you're lazy or it's so hurtful. So, oh no, I'm fine. If I didn't have this, otherwise I'd be fine. So the kids are into it too. Is there more of it? It certainly seems like there's more, but I don't know if there is. I think just that it's being diagnosed. We know more now.
Yeah.
And I had one girl, she was diagnosed from the psychologist, she was diagnosed that she had high anxiety. From the neurologist, they said she had ADHD. From the speech therapist, they diagnosed that she had auditory processing disorder. What did she really have? I don't really know. So when we went to get the help at this school, I said, which one can she get the help from? She needs extra time. That's all she needs. I don't care what it is. Just give her that extra time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned earlier your 3 tunes or everything like that, or the motivation, disorganization, and procrastination. And like I said, we were going back and forth on our mail and everything like that. There are some of them that I know better than others, and I wish that I didn't know them. I feel that I am very self-motivated, whether it's this podcast or everything that I do and everything like that. But I do know that I can sometimes be a little bit on the messy side and be a little disorganized and everything like that. And I also know that I am the master of procrastination. So I was just wondering, what are some of the tips that you give to get people past those, particularly our kids, that maybe even the adults can learn from these lessons as well? Because I know that I can sometimes be disorganized. I'm sitting here looking at some notes that I'm looking at that need to be organized and everything like that, because I collect a lot of addresses and everything like that, and some of these addresses need to just go into the address book, and then I can get rid of the papers that have the addresses were written on and everything. And I know that even in terms of like making those decisions that I was talking about it earlier, I am the master of procrastinating, and then by the time I'm done procrastinating, the opportunity is gone, whatever the opportunity was. So what are some of the lessons that we can learn from your book about how to get past these things that not just kids but adults have to face as well?
That's okay. You first said disorganization.
Right.
If you truly are disorganized and you can't quite pull everything together, ADHD people seem to be more disorganized, even with time management. Yeah. Okay, I'll be there in an hour. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Oh, I got to go call so-and-so. I've got to go do, and all this. Keep track of everything. Write things down. List it. I need this. I have to do this first. Number 1, number 2, number 3. Put in what you have to do. So it just gets it out of your head onto that piece of paper. Yeah. And I'm saying write it. I know you have dysgraphia. Write it. I don't care if you scribble it. I don't care if it looks like a chicken walked across the page. By writing, you're using more neurons in your brain than sitting and typing.
Yeah,
so write things down and try to organize it, and seeing it now on paper, and then put it in order. This is first, and then I have to do this, and check it off. Very organized people always have lists, and they love, if anyone's listening and they love this, they're these real, I love doing this, and I cross it off. Okay, that's done. Write it all out. Okay.
That makes sense. Yeah, I was going to say, because my disorganization winds up, and I know some other friends. I've actually got a buddy of mine that lives around the corner from me and everything like that. It lends itself to a little bit of, I hate to even use this term, and a lot of people use it. And sometimes people that have dysgraphia are victims of it as well, but it leads to a little bit of hoarding, because I know that there are things that I am good at saving that need to be saved. Like I said, I've got documentation around my grandmother and everything else, but even some of the things as I'm going through them, because I was actually doing that yesterday and a couple of days ago, I'm going like, why do I still have this magazine? I don't really need this magazine. This magazine has nothing to do with anything that I'm doing in the life or anything along those lines. So I do know that sometimes, and I did that even as a kid. There were things that I kept as a kid that I probably didn't need to keep. And then, unfortunately, with hoarding, you also get into situations where you get in different environments, whether it's your own apartment or anything else. So there have been items that I lost that I probably should have kept, and items that I wish that I didn't keep that have now gone, that are still in existence. So I know that I hoard, and that there are things that I don't need, but I also know that there are items that, because of the going back and forth and trying to decide what to keep and not keep, that I regret losing. Like I remember one time, me and the Cultural Arts Center that I work at, we went to a Memphis, Tennessee, and there was a contest and everything, and I won a like a scavenger hunt award and everything like that. I wish I still had that medal, but I don't know where the medal is. I'll never get the medal back because the medal is probably in somebody's dumpster now and everything like that. But at least I know, and the person that I went with, there was my boss at the time, know that I won and everything. And maybe the person that ran the curio shop knows that I won, but I don't have the physical proof that I won. So I do know that there are times that I have lost things that I wish I had kept. That's what I'm trying to say.
I think you're normal. I think that's it. We're so critical of ourselves, but probably every single person listening is going to say, oh, you know what I lost? And everyone's going to think of something that they wanted.
Right.
And you don't know where it is. And did I throw it out? Did I do it? Everybody. So I think you're just normal. You're running a show. Yes, you're doing great. So you're functioning. You're pretty normal.
Thank you. I appreciate that and everything. But I do know, and I mentioned earlier, and kids are notorious for this and everything along those lines. So what are ways that kids can be encouraged to get away from procrastination? Because procrastination is probably the number one thing that kids love to do and everything like that. Because I know even my nephews, there are games that they love and they got into the video games. I know one of them is into Roblox. A couple of them are, well, the other one, because there's only two of them, is into like some of the strategy games and war games and stuff like that and along those lines. But I do know that even with my brother and his two boys and my nephews, that they probably procrastinate from doing their homework. I was glad that they did not procrastinate in putting in their applications, because he got accepted, I think, into 5 universities, and he'll probably wind up going to UNCG. I think that's the last one I heard that he was leaning toward and everything like that. So he and his brother will be putting in applications to the schools he wants to go to. So I was glad that they did not procrastinate. But I also know my brother and their grandparents, my parents, were not going to let those boys procrastinate. They were going to get those applications in whether they wanted to or not and everything like that, because they were going to be encouraging them to put in those applications. But I do know that if left to our own devices, kids are very much masters at procrastination. So what are some of the things that you have in your book to get people away from procrastinating?
Get someone, a friend, somebody, a teacher, a parent, a grandparent. Everyone knows who procrastinates. The grandchild's going to procrastinate. You say to them, you know what, I'm going to come over, and what time's good for you? Right. And I'll just let me start it with you. Mm-hmm. I start every lesson with the kids sitting across from me. I say to them, oh, you have to write a paper on that? Mm-hmm. Let me see them. If you think about it, I'm going to think about it. And I start writing. And they'll be doing something. Before you know it, they start. And they will take over. Mm-hmm. Their procrastination is just a whatever's going on in the brain. They can't quite pull it together. And yelling at them, you're always procrastinating, you never do. They can't help how the brain is working. But if they're children and they, as adults, you go in with the child, I don't care if they're making the college applications, whatever it is, some adult says, you know what, I'm going to just come over. I'll sit there with you. I'll sit next to you. That's okay. What time? Let them be part of it. Respect them. And they'll respect you and they'll respect what you're doing. And it'll help them calm down. I started doing that with all the kids forever. They'd come in here because no one's coming to me who's got A+. Yeah. So I've been for 50 years with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids of every age. And I remember they'd walk in and the backpacks, oh my God. And then we start taking out and the cookie crumbs in there and the sneakers on the bottom and the book, and we can't find they had the book, they didn't have the assignment. If they had the assignment, they lost the book. One boy walked in one day and goes, I lost the whole backpack. I can't find the backpack. So I've lived with these people. You just very calmly, you don't start yelling and screaming. That's their problem. It's like yelling to someone who's blind. Just look at it. They can't. I mean, listen to what I'm saying. The kid may be hearing impaired. You're not listening. Right. They're disorganized. They're procrastinating, whatever it is. Help them. And eventually they get into a better routine. And they know that their feeling of self-worth, and you know what? I'm okay. I'm okay.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I wish that some of my own kids had done that. I mean, the teachers had done that. Because I remember I had one teacher in high school and everything like that. And whenever you did not turn in your assignment, they had this expression and everything like that. That it was not the best expression for a kid to get as a child and everything like that. But I just remember this teacher. I cannot remember their name, but their idea was like if you came up with an excuse that you did not turn in your paper, maybe you lost it or whatever, like you were saying for those kids and everything. And their expression was, well, that's your little red wagon and everything like that. So they would use that expression of that's your little red wagon, basically meaning that that's your responsibility.
That's
And if
your
you don't have
problem.
it, then that's
Yeah.
on you and everything like that. But I do remember that expression, even though that was decades ago when I was in
Yeah.
school. But I remember that teacher and them saying that. I also remember a drama teacher that also had us do like some role playing. I mentioned IPC earlier, but he would have us pretending like if we were doing drama class or drama workshops that we were in two chairs and the chairs was representing a car and everything like that. So it was a method of actually having to pretend like you were getting out of the car. So you were doing that pantomime of getting out of the car or the pantomime of driving and everything like that. So I think that writer that might have even done some work at UNC. So I think he became well known, and I wish I could think of his name and everything like that. But he was definitely a good drama teacher and everything like that. But I do remember that. And the other one that I remember, and you'll get a kick out of this, Miss Silbert and everything like that, was sometimes teachers also don't always know the environment that they're getting into. So I had the privilege of having, because I was one of the, I won't say I was the smartest kid in the school or even one of the smarter kids. My grade average was actually only decent. I was probably like a 2.5 kid in both high school and college, but we didn't have that many people that wanted to take physics and everything like that. So I took a physics class and all along those lines. There was maybe 15 of us in the school, and it was taught by a young lady from Laos and everything like that. So from the Asian country. And I just remember her giving me this long essay and this long formula, whatever the formula was in physics and everything like that. And this is where I learned an important lesson about teachers, which is that not every teacher knows what they're doing, and everything like that. So they had just got out of college themselves, and they gave this long formula and everything like that. And I remember in one of the thickest Asian accents that I've ever heard, even to this day, we were all looking at them, and then they looked at us, and they were going like, and I think we were trying to figure out what the formula was and how the formula worked and everything like that. And they looked back at us, and in the thickest Asian accent I've ever heard, they were like, "I'm not sure that this is right." And we as teachers are going, we as students are going like, well, if you're the student, you're the teacher, and you don't know it's right, how do we know it's right and everything like that? So it
Oh
was just,
my God.
I just remember that all of us, and there was only a few of us in that class because it was a advanced math class or advanced science class, and I just remember all of us going like, well, if she doesn't know it's right, we're in trouble.
Definitely lose confidence. Oh my God, that's
Yeah,
hysterical.
it was just so
Wow.
terrible because we were like, if she doesn't know it's right, I know we're in
Oh my God.
deep trouble and everything like that. Just really quickly, and we'll wind up in about another 10, 15 minutes and everything like that. But you also talk about something very important and everything like that, which is the terrible twos. And I do know a little bit about that, and you kind of alluded to them early and everything. But what can you do? Because I don't think that we get enough rest, both as adults and definitely not our kids and everything like that. So what we do if we are feeling that we are not getting enough rest. And I do have another guest that's coming in, so I'm gonna bring him in, and we might even make it to the full 2 hours and everything like that. But just what do you think about this notion of not getting enough rest and all along those lines? Because I do sometimes think that we don't give ourselves enough time to rest our bodies.
You're right. I have a chapter and I call it the terrible twos, and it's not TWO, it's TOO.
Mhm.
Too much or too little, the terrible twos. And I talk about sleep
Mhm.
because children are too tired,
Mhm.
and especially the teenagers. They need that morning hour, those morning hours. That's when the teens get into the deepest sleep. And so school starts at 7:30. So they're up from 6 o'clock getting ready to get to the bus and they are too tired. We took a boy years ago and he was failing math. He was in 10th grade. And the teacher was same teacher at the last period in the day. And I took him out of the morning class. I called the guidance counselor and I said, can we move him to the last period of the day? He started passing. He couldn't function in the morning. That's one thing. Then I think the kids are too over committed.
Right.
I don't know about there, but around here, the suburbs of Manhattan, Oh my God. They come home from school and they have to then go to soccer, then they have to go to swim, then they have to go to music. Then I had a mother call once and she said, my son is in 6th grade. He needs tutoring desperately. He is not doing that well. He has between 6 and 7 on Friday night. And I said, that's all he has in the whole week? And she said, yes. So do you have any tutor that can work with him between 6 and 7? And I said, no. I said, I'm not giving you a tutor. He's not struggling. He's too overbooked. How can you have a child 6th grade and they're every hour? And so the kids come home and I think they're too tired. They're too overbooked. They do too much multitasking. They think they can go on the computer doing the homework at the same time. And now they sit and they all the ADHD kids and they have all these other things that they're working. I'm fidgeting because I have ADHD. And I said, I'm distracted. Maybe just put it down.
Yeah.
The brain can do one thing at a time. That's it.
Yep.
And that's all the brain can do. And so when the kids say, no, I must have the music on. I have to have music on because I have to, because I said, no, you can do one thing at a time. Those terrible twos, I give a whole list of them in that chapter of all things I think just too much.
Too much. And speaking of too much, I'm gonna bring in LeVar Love and everything like that, and all along those lines. Hope we can stick around with him as well. But he brings up what you're saying, and it's even the same thing with the entrepreneurials and everything like that. And he's on mute, so hopefully he get off mute. But he talks about the notion of, if we're being honest, most entrepreneurs don't struggle from a lack of strategy. They struggle from carrying too much for too long without space. This is the process where it's all costing them and everything like that. So it looks like they have the same issues that the young people have, that they are not doing enough planning and everything like that. So LeVar, because I know you're a serial entrepreneur, you're a real estate speaker, and you've done stuff like that. I was actually shocked at how few entrepreneurs we have in our minority community in terms of real estate development and stuff like that, because I was talking to somebody in that space and everything like that. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, because LeVar, I know you say that even success can quietly become overwhelming, and how to recognize it before the burnout hits. So kids get burnout, also entrepreneurs get burnout as well. So share a little bit about this. I've been having this lovely conversation with Miss Silbert and everything, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about some of the things that even we don't pay enough attention to, the sense of play in entrepreneurship and everything like that. So some of these conversations we've been having fit in what the work that you're doing as well. So share a little bit about what you've got going on, including, as I love you say, the unseen emotional weight of entrepreneurship, and why no one talks about that, because we don't even think about the unseen emotional weight. And we were actually earlier talking about the latchkey aspect of business, and how that can impact both the child and the parent. And I was mentioning that my parents had a radio station in the late 70s and everything like that, and that was almost the third child. And Dr. Silbert was talking about how her parents had a toy store and everything like that, and that was almost part of their business as well. So I'd love to hear your thoughts around entrepreneurship and how it even impacted your growing up and everything like that. And maybe you were diagnosed with ADHD and being kind of dysgraphic and being overly stimulated as a youngster as well.
So, Mark, I appreciate you having me on, and I concur with Dr. Silbert. I think that those the children that are kind of diagnosed with ADHD and are kind of overstimulated, have too much going on, they simply become adults with the same symptoms in the same situations. So what I found is I work today with a lot of entrepreneurs, especially kind of in the real estate and construction field. And what I found is the ones that are most successful, they're doing 20 things. Like, and really a lot of times they're not doing 20 of them well. You know, most of the time they're not doing 20 of them well. They when we sit down, we do this thing called the ideal week, right? Mm-hmm. Because these successful entrepreneurs, successful business professionals, they want to spend quality time with their family. They want to grow their business. They want to spend time with their friends. They have all of these things they want to do, but they don't have a plan for it. And they do not plan meditation or self-care or recovery. All of these things that Dr. Silbert is talking about that the high schoolers need, the teenagers, well, adults need those same things. And many times we are not trained and we are not taught how to sit down, and the fact that sometimes you got to slow down to speed up. And I worked with a lot of entrepreneurs talking about, hey, when do you plan your recovery? When do you plan to meditate? When do you plan to work out? Because if you do these things, you'll probably end up performing better on the backside if you just take the time to rest and you take the time to recover. So I applaud you, Dr. Silbert, for your work. Our adults need it just as much as the teenagers do.
Yes, and the adults feel guilty. They feel guilty if they say they have to rest, or it's like they're almost in a race with each other. I did this one, I did this one, I did this. And and I hate to say the women, the moms, a lot of the moms are just so overwhelmed. You can't do it all. You can't do it all. And you can do it all, but it's not all going to be done well.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the whole thing. And the kids are I always take a schedule and I always have them fill in. Monday, you're in school till 3. What do you do at 3 till 4, 5 to Tuesday? Well, they are all booked up. And they're coming to me because they're failing. I said, of course you're going to fail. You're trying to push school in to this schedule. They want to work because they want a car, and then they have to pay for the insurance, but they're also on the football team. But then one boy walked in one day at 8 at night. He goes, do you have any aspirin or Tylenol or anything? My head, I said, no, I'm not giving you anything. You're overworked. And and the parents are doing it, all of them. They're in this kind of race.
You see, in that rush kind of attitude and everything like that. And I think that it has become, that's what I mentioned when I said play, that we don't incorporate enough of the play aspect in our life. And we're in that rush kind of thing. I know that I'm guilty sometimes of going out, and probably the two of you are as well. I know that you've got a husband and everything like that, but I'm not sure your status in terms of relationships, LeVar. But I know that sometimes we're so busy wanting to get food in our system that we're rushing to get DoorDash or rushing to the restaurant and everything like that because we needed it to be quick, fast, and in a hurry. So that's something that I think has really been impacting our lives, because everybody wants everything quick, fast, and in a hurry. They want that success, to your point, LeVar, and everything that they wanted quick, fast, and in a hurry. But you have to build stuff up. Because I know one of the things that you talk about, and I'd love to hear your thoughts around this, LeVar, is there's a lot of things that founders learn too late about relationships, time, and presence, and everything like that. So what do you mean by that? Because I think that a lot of times we don't even think about the impact of relationships, even the relationship with our kids, until it is too late. And definitely we don't even think about our own presence and everything like that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts around that and how it actually has impacted some of these entrepreneurs that you work with.
Yeah. So in that situation, I would love to shine the light on myself, actually. So I use myself as an example. I think back to 2021 when my business was taking off. I was first becoming a developer in the city of Chicago and things of that nature. But I realized my marriage, so I'm a happily married man, my marriage wasn't like at the top of this priority list. And what I mean by that, I wasn't focusing on it. So I had these set goals for business. I had these set financial goals, but I didn't have goals for my relationship. And it was like, it took me sitting down with my wife. And as I was going through this, I was reading the book, Living Forward, right? That's where it all started. I was reading Living Forward, where it talked about a 10-year plan, but it talks about creating a 10-year plan that is focused on the accounts or the relationships that matter most to you. Well, my marriage is at the top. Well, why, if my marriage is at the top, why am I spending more time focused on my business and more time focused on the goal, my financial goals, than I am my marriage and my relationship with my wife? And then from there, the relationship with my kids. So it became this focus of mine to have intentionality around the relationships that matter most to me. And then tying that into this ideal week, right, that I plan for myself. It's like, do I have time to spend with family? Do I have time to spend with my wife? And if those buckets or those accounts are what's most important, I need to plan those first. So it was critical for me to change my life to make sure that I was focused on the relationships that matter most. And then just be honest, when I was living that way, it became very easy for me to talk to the other business owners, the entrepreneurs, my peer group about, hey, I know we're talking about the goals that we want to achieve for, back then it was 2023, 2024. It's like, how's everybody coming into the room today and how are your relationships? And it all in the beginning, they were almost uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah.
because so many people had not set goals and realistically prioritize these critical relationships in our lives.
How important do you think it is, even in business? Because I was talking with this to Dr. Silbert earlier as well. In the education, she brings the notion of games and gaming, whether it's card games or other things, in terms of developing strategies and everything like that. So I was just wondering, how important is this to your business as well? Because I don't think we oftentimes don't pay enough attention to games, whether it's chess, which I know can be a successful tool for entrepreneurs, because I've got some friends, including the founders of this network, or at least one of the founders, that are into chess and everything like that. So how important has the gaming aspect been to you? Because even what Dr. Silbert does is she brings games into education, and sometimes the games accidentally create accidental learning and everything like that, for lack of a better term. Because you mentioned an example before you got here where there was a kid that was playing games and didn't realize that they were learning reading and everything like that, but they were finding these card games and everything like that. So how important has games been in your own business life?
I've taught every one of my kids financial savviness through Monopoly.
Fabulous.
Yeah. So it is,
Fabulous.
to me, games are the easiest way to teach sometimes, because when you're having that fun, right, you don't think about the learning and all that. You're just having a good time. You know, you're celebrating or having a really good time with friends and family. You don't focus on the learning. And then if you can connect the learning afterwards or in another conversation, you've already planted those seeds, right? So all you have to do is now water them. And then they realize, like, oh my God, oh yeah, you were buying property. You know, Dad, you know, that real estate business that I have. Remember when you were putting houses on, you know, First Avenue or whatever? It was like it created so many opportunities to have conversations around financial development, financial growth, financial resiliency, things of that nature. So I think it's really important, and it makes it easier sometimes to get the learning when you're just playing a game and having fun.
Can I bring something in? They actually did research down here at Hunter College, and they took one biology class of college students and they taught them traditionally. They took the other class and they taught them by playing cards, like I do. I play because my kids, they all learn to read, because that anxiety goes down, the focus is up. They want to play, and they're asking me, can we play again? And they want to practice. They don't even know they're doing it. So they took these two classes. The class that used the game got higher grades, and they remembered it longer because they were totally focused. They weren't in a lecture situation taking notes. So the games have shown to really, really help with education.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Everything, and I agree with you on that. Hey, LeVar, just really quickly, just switching the conversation just slightly, but still want to get back to education, everything like that. Do you feel, because I mentioned it earlier, that I was talking to a young lady, I think she's originally from Chicago, Charlotte. She's originally from Charlotte, everything like that. But she was talking about how few Black women there are that are in real estate development and how few minorities there are. And I know that a lot of our minority land was taken and everything like that. So do you think that we are not doing enough in terms of getting involved, not so much in terms of like real estate in the sense of like the kind of like the traditional side of real estate and everything, but the real estate development side? Because I know that there's a lot of properties that were stolen in whatever ways they were stolen and everything like that. So there's a lot of Black real estate agents, but they're doing more like the traditional agency work, not necessarily the development side. So I was just wondering, why is that, and what can we do to improve that?
Sure. So what I've seen is that there's a connection, right? When the agents, it's a sales process, more of a customer service process, things of that nature. When you look at the development side of it, well, now you're dealing more on the construction side, right? Mm-hmm. The construction planning, the dealing with subcontractors. And what I would say is that skill set typically isn't, developed, right, with women and things of that nature. So many times, in order to make sure that the females are represented appropriately, they have a lot of cohorts in the Chicagoland area. There are a lot of development programs specifically focused towards women, so that there are women in construction, things of that nature. It's an environment, and I'll be candid. So I have a female partner in my construction company, and I was actually blind to how she was treated in the room sometimes, because and she had to bring it to my attention, because we would go into a room of subcontractors or whatever the case may be, and they would embrace me. I hate to say it, but just like one of the guys, hey, what's going on? Blah, 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 blah. And a just organic conversation about maybe the Bulls or the Bears or the game would turn into a business conversation that, unfortunately, not intentionally, but she would be excluded from. She would kind of be on the outside of the conversation trying to get in. And I didn't realize it. I did not realize it. And she's my partner. So it was over time that I became cognizant of how in the construction field, construction management, things of that nature, that we have to create a pathway for our women, and especially our minority women, because they're on the outside looking in, and that directly translates to why you don't see more minority women in development, if that makes sense, because of that construction piece.
No, that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting you said that, because there was a show, and I need to get back in touch with Tracy Mebane that we had on the network for a while. She only had a few episodes and everything like that, but she had a brand. I think her brand is still called Pink Hammer and everything like that, because she was in construction and all along those lines. But I know that she would talk about that to some degree, because she's here in North Carolina, because she would talk about this notion of how a lot of people would stereotype her as not even being the boss. And when they came in there, they might even be doing cat whistles and other things, because they were treating her like you would some other women, including some of the people that she was their boss, but she was treating them in that sexualization kind of way and everything like that. So she definitely brought that up one time, this notion of how they were treating her not as an equal, but as as a boss, but as a subservient, for lack of a better.
If I could give you a specific example, I can't even count how many rooms we walked in, because I have an executive assistant as well. How many rooms we walked in, my partner and I, and they immediately thought she was my executive assistant. Mm-hmm. It happened so much, it became offensive, mm-hmm. that they immediately thought, that's Roseanne, that's your assistant. Like, no, this is my partner. And then what she would say is, yeah, I'm his partner, the one that you've met 3 times already. Wow. Like, that's how offensive it would be sometimes.
Yeah, I can believe that. Everything like that's just amazing and everything like that. I know another thing that you talk about, LeVar, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, and even Dr. Silbert as well, is you talk about the unseen emotional weight of entrepreneurship and why no one talks about it. Because I've got a lot of friends. I mean, I'm in the entrepreneurial space in arts management and stuff like that, but I've got friends that are in that. And yes, there's a lot of emotional weights that we don't think about, including bringing that sense of play, which I mentioned earlier, even into the business lane. So I was just wondering if you could share a little bit about this notion of that unseen emotional weight, and why do you think no one talks about it?
Sure. So for me, through my lens, what I see happening is many times when people hear that you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, they think about the things they see on TV. They think mm-hmm. about the highlights. They don't understand many times all of the work, the pressure, and the stress that's going on, like what I like to say is behind the curtain. So I work with a lot of business owners that I get a chance to see behind the curtain, and I've lived that experience. It's like how you fight to make payroll some weeks, right? When the check hasn't been cut, when project is still going on that you should have finished already. That's just kind of on my side. But I work with other small business owners where, hey, you know what? The business isn't going how the projections or the pro forma said. So, but nobody knows that except that business owner or maybe the leadership team. And so they have this stress, and everybody's like, well, I see your commercials, or I saw you at this event and on this panel and on social media. They think the world is great, but behind the curtain, there is so much stress that it's like just weight, just bearing down on their shoulders. I talk to so many business owners that are like, man, I'm not sleeping well. Right. I'm up all night because their mind is just spinning. Right. It's just spinning about all the problems that they have that many people don't know and don't see, because you're projecting this image of this successful business and everything that's going right. And you're internalizing all of the things that aren't going right.
Right. Now that makes a lot of sense and everything. I know part of the reason that this network, meaning Pod TV, was created, and I'd love to hear both of y'all thoughts around this, is this notion that we're not teaching enough of positive things in our school system. So Nick Palveda and Kim Calhoun, part of the reason they created this network was they wanted more fiscal literacy to be taught in our school systems and everything like that. And I know that unfortunately these are things that are not taught in our school system. So I just wanted y'all take on the modern day education and what are some of the ways that we can improve modern education, because I do think that there are a lot of skills, including some hard skills, like I mentioned earlier, being a little bit of a hoarder and messy and all in that space. So I know that even like when I was in school in the 70s, there were people that were taking home ec and even taking some of the more basic skills that you need in life. And I don't even know, I need to check with my nephews whether those are even offered as much as they used to be and everything like that. But I know that fiscal literacy is not something that is taught the way that it should be. So I'd love to hear both of y'all as to y'all's the impact of how y'all think we're doing in terms of education and what are some of the things that we should be teaching. Not knocking AI. I know that even Dr. Silbert mentioned that earlier and everything like that. And it is a new form of what's going on. But sometimes I think that maybe we're too caught up in the technology and not teaching some of the basic skills that we should be teaching and everything like that. So I'll start with you, Dr. Silbert, but I also want to hear from LeVar as to how you feel we're doing education-wise.
Okay, up here in New York, there's something called BOCES. I don't know if you have that. And I don't know if it's only New York. I'm not sure if it's across the country. Every county has a BOCES. It's like a college campus. And you go there if you want to become an electrician, if you want to be a graphic designer, you want to go into construction, you want to go into, it's all these fields. And I just love it because they keep pushing. Everybody can become a doctor. Everyone can become a lawyer. You may not want to. And it's very hard. Let me tell you, it's not that easy. And what are you doing this for? Okay. They have car mechanics, the car mechanic. They have everything. And I had one boy, which I think he was one of 8 children. And his siblings all went to Ivy League schools. And the mom brought him to me. Oh, the nicest kid. He's a senior in high school. And he was average IQ and he was struggling. And I said to him, what do you love? You have to do this your whole life. What do you love? I don't care what degree you have. Okay, you're just surrounded by living here in these suburbs of the city. I don't know. The pressure is horrible. Okay, so I said, and he said, but I really love car mechanics. I said, go to BOCES. BOCES is fabulous. BOCES is just so wonderful. I said, go and make sure you become a car mechanic for the most expensive cars. They are going to pray to you because they don't want anything to happen to their cars, and you will be God. And so he actually did. And he opened this humongous place and he has its classical music playing when you go in there waiting for your car. And it just began, I said, just accept who you are. That's what I was saying before, accept who you are. And the parents can't have a fantasy of some kid or someone they wanted. Just know who you are. And I said, but I just love these type of, I have one boy right now, he's becoming an electrician. Do you know how electricians right now are needed?
Yeah.
They need electricians desperately. Okay. My daughter's a chemistry professor and she started an entire program with MIT on photonics. Photonics, you're shaking, they need workers so badly right now. So she started this entire program. She's at Stonehill College for photonics people. And now they're literally getting someone to come in and take over, and they're going to pay this person just to run the whole program because it took these kids from community colleges, high school, from all over, who they don't need to become the veterinarian. Every kid comes in, I want to be a veterinarian. So it's like they have these wonderful programs. Photonics, if anyone's listening, it's wide open. They've done all the theory, all that's done. They need workers. And I said to my daughter one day, okay, explain what this is. I said, so wait a minute. So someone worker will be like a photician, like you have an electrician. So you'll call, she said, oh, yeah, I guess that's it. And it's so new. She was at a meeting about a year or two ago at MIT with all these people, and they said something about photonics. And my daughter said, well, we need photicians. And someone said, that's a great word. We haven't come up with the word yet. She's actually another thought of it.
It's
I
interesting.
didn't understand it. I said, just what does that mean? But it was, I mean, oh my gosh, yes, they definitely need just, and let kids know it's okay.
It's definitely okay to get in these other fields. And even LeVar, I'm sure you can agree with this as well, because you mentioned earlier the doctors and everything. We do have here in North Carolina a very active community college scene, and everything like that is actually one of our governors was very proud of that. And they teach them about things like being being a car mechanic and being a plumber and electricians and a number of other fields that are in there. But what people forget, and I oftentimes even bring it up in this show, and I'm sure you can relate to that being in Chicago and everything like that, is that some of those fields actually make a lot more money. I was talking about the pink hammer earlier and truck driving than the doctors and the lawyers, particularly after you add that money that they've got to do in terms of getting their student loans paid and everything like that. So electricians and truck drivers can make a whole heap of money and everything like that. So I agree that there's definitely some fields that are much needed and everything like that. So definitely don't be thinking that you got to be not if you want to be a doctor or lawyer. Like I said, my nephew wants to be an activist lawyer and everything like that. If you want to go into those fields, that's cool. But I'm a big supporter of what they call blue collar work, or definitely some of those trades and everything.
The trades.
Like that.
It's the trades. Yeah.
So what's your take on that, LeVar? And what are some of the things that you wish more people would teach about and everything? Because I think a lot of times we're not paying enough attention to fiscal literacy. And even I'll tell you something that really shocked me on one of these shows earlier. There was a gentleman, I think he's in Dubai and everything like that. And there's a lot of people that don't even have the basic skills of creating a business. Like any business should have, in my mind, a mission statement. They should have a business proposal. They should have like a sort of a outline of a plan. And you can go to a lot of entrepreneurs and you can ask them for those very basic things. And they're sitting there going like, I don't have that. What's that? And everything like that. Even like the basic proposals and everything like that. So I just wanted your take, because you're in that real estate field. So I'm sure it might have even taken you a minute to realize the things that you needed in the business that you might not have had it when you first started.
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough that I did a lot of my business plan work when I was getting my MBA. So I had those things. Of course, they've been refined over the years several times. But when it comes to education and the education system, I'm going to say I happily echo what Dr. Silbert is saying. I am proud of the work that is being done today, really just through workforce development and the initiatives to teach the trades. Because I'm a Gen Xer. So, and I feel that we really minimized the trades when we were coming up because IT was so exciting. It was new. It was, the next wave, kind of like what's happening with AI, right? But I feel that today that we have to emphasize how important it is to have these core trades and professions that really are the backbone of our country. Right. I was like, I don't know if you've had a leak in your pipes, in your water, in your house, but I promise you need that plumber just as bad if you were having a heart attack and you needed that doctor. I promise you. Yep. So I'm in Chicago when it's, it gets down to 15 degrees outside, let a pipe bust. I promise you the plumber is the most valuable person in the neighborhood. Yeah. So, and to me, the fact that I know for a fact in the Chicagoland area and in the state of Illinois, there is an emphasis, every other commercial, it seems like, has something about supporting the trades, learning the trades, things of that nature. So there's an emphasis there to help rebuild our infrastructure. So.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we need that. Yep.
Yeah, we definitely need that. There's no doubt about that. Everything you mentioned earlier, and Dr. Silbert mentioned it earlier as well, even in the education space. I know a lot of people that are very much concerned about the AI and the nature of AI, even in education. So I know I went to a film festival and the filmmakers, and we have a big one here in Durham, North Carolina, called Full Frame. It just ended this past weekend and everything. And even some of the filmmakers were like, we hope that we're going to be here in another 5 or 6 years, but there's a possibility the robots may be making these films and everything like that. So I am a big fan of human intuition and human knowledge. And I don't think that the robots quite have that human connection. So I'm not as worried as some of them are about certain careers being evaporating. But yeah, I'm also around the corner from several restaurants, and I know that some of those people are concerned that you might go there, and even now you can go there, and sometimes it's a robot taking your order and everything like that. So how concerned are the two of you about this notion of AI and robots taking over our life and our education system? Who knows? We might even have robot teachers after a while. I do remember Rosie back in the Jetson days and everything like that. So are we more heading in that direction, or are you like me? You feel that there's got to be that human element that the robots can't quite take over?
Do you want to go first, Dave?
Yeah.
Okay. I had an argument with yesterday on Zoom. I couldn't get on Zoom, and I went in a robot for a half hour, 30 minutes. And she kept saying, I am sorry. Let us try this. Now let us do that. And I thought I was going to explode. I said, get me a person. Get me. I understand that you must be getting upset. I understand. I thought I was going to lose my mind having this argument with a robot. Okay. Are they going to be all over? I think it's brilliant. It's helping medical. It's helping so many things. And what I was saying to you before, I mean, the kids cannot write. They go to AI. They're not learning how to write. But if you notice, every time you put anything through AI, it comes out finishing it with your journey. So after a while, there's certain words that AI keeps saying. It's robotic. Yeah. And the child, the one who's going to move ahead, is going to be the person who's going to use it as a supplement. But there's still, I mean, it's just like with anything else. It's just, I said to you before, the kid who's going to cheat and is going to write the whole paper, they're going to cheat anyway. They would have cheated. They would cheat anyway. I mean, it doesn't matter. Remember, my daughter came home one day and she said, this kid in front of me, he cheats every single test. And he dropped the paper on the floor, a different paper. And she said, he sat right in front of me along the window, along the heater. And the teacher said, are you cheating? What are you picking up? And he goes, if I was going to cheat, I'd put the paper in the heater. I wouldn't put it there. And she said, he had the paper in the heater. And the teacher said, okay. She just went on with the class. I thought my daughter's going to go nuts. And so the kids are going to cheat anyway. It's not going to matter. And so the AI, I think, is useful. Learn how to use it, but it's not going to replace. It is going to replace certain jobs. I definitely think so. Just like, I mean, the automobile and people with horse and buggies, what do? I mean, electricity came, there goes the gas lamps. It's done. It's over. Okay, so, but I think I think the one who's going to get ahead is going to be that person who has the people skills, and the person who now can write a paper without running to it. It'll change, but I don't think it's the end of education.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. What's your takes on that, LeVar? What are your thoughts around education and this AI revolution?
So I think I have a unique perspective. Since August of 2025, I've been to 2 AI kind of trainings, attempted to get a certificate, just simply to understand the impact AI might have on business workflows. Right. That's kind of what I really focused on, business workflows. So I kind of went through the ChatGPT to Gemini Pro, and most recently adapted to Claude. Which is supposed to be the best when it comes to business workflows. And what I found is that, it's natural evolution, but I don't think it's coming as fast as people think. Because I've think about now, I've said that I've taken these training classes that are supposed to say, oh, you can automate all of your business workflows, right? And I feel that for my age, I'm a pretty savvy person when it comes to just basic technology and things of that nature. And I'm advanced when it comes to people in real estate development, construction, and things of that nature. And I went on, did some of these things that are supposed to be so simple because you're using AI to automate workflow and automate your virtual assistant and automate these things. It's not as easy. It's not as easy as they're saying. It's not that easy. We are not there yet. We are not where, in a year, all of these jobs are going to be gone. It is not there. I'm sorry.
Right.
Now, Is it evolving? Is it changing rapidly? Yes, it is. Every 6 months, there's an update that you're like, oh wow, it couldn't do that 6 months ago. It didn't respond in that way. It's thinking a little better, a little bit more savvy. But just like what Dr. Silbert is saying, it's the individual who learns it and understands it and can leverage AI to be more efficient, right? To be more timely, to get work out faster. Those will be the people that kind of succeed and move on, and they'll get the jobs, not the AI.
No, I agree with you on that and everything like that. Because one of the things that I've noticed is I have many jobs. I mentioned the Cultural Arts Center and, of course, Pod TV. But the other job that I have is I work for a testing company and everything like that. And that's what I meant when I said that I don't know that AI has created enough knowledge of nuances and everything like that. I mean, when you think of testing and standardized testing, there are things that anybody should know. We all should know that 2 + 2 = 4. We all should know the basic kind of like shapes and everything like that, whether it's a circle, whether it's a triangle, or things along those lines. So that's things that I think AI can easily grade and everything like that. But then there are questions that are asked even in some of these tests that are more nuanced. So somebody from Chicago may answer differently than somebody from the rural parts of North Carolina and everything like that. And somebody from, say, Idaho who might answer differently than somebody from New York. And that's where I think that AI hasn't quite got it yet and everything like that. But I agree with you that it may eventually get it. But right now it doesn't understand human nuances, whether that's around ethnicity, whether that's around culture and around things along those lines. So like if I was to ask somebody their favorite musician and everything like that, then there are going to be some basic answers that everybody's probably going to lean to just because they're super popular. Everybody's probably going to go with Beyonce and Jay-Z, but there are also going to be people that are going to give the answers that are more regional. Like they might have somebody that's really hot and popular in Idaho and everything like that. And AI is not going to necessarily know that because they're not in Idaho and they might not have that same kind of background. And the same thing with like the way that a farmer may treat something differently than somebody from the city. So that's where I think AI hasn't quite got it, is the human nuances.
Agreed.
So that's where I'm thinking that it could be a whole different thing in that sense and everything like that. I was just curious. One of the other questions that I know that I was really curious about for you, LeVar, and everything like that is there's a lot of people that are thinking that they are good decision makers, whether they're in high school or whether they're in other places as well. But you have to be intentional about your decision making, and you have to be intentional about leadership and everything like that. So I know even in some of your workshops you talk about this. So what do you mean by that and everything like that? Because I sometimes think that even when we think about leadership with our kids, we're not always thinking about how we can cultivate leadership and everything like that. So what do you think? What is your concept of what leadership means and how can it impact both our kids and also our adult entrepreneurs and even our kid entrepreneurs? Because by the way, I've seen some amazing kid entrepreneurs because I've worked with some of these kids and everything like that in the places that I've worked and all along those lines. I mean, there's one kid here locally that has put together their own comic book. Actually, we had an event this past weekend and everything like that. It was our annual poetry slam. And there were some kids that were selling like jewelry, and they were selling like things that you could put on your dresses, and they were also selling like confectionaries, candies, and cookies and stuff like that. Those kids were really good, and they even went on stage. And one of the kids was very much had self-confidence. So he was up there. He was like, y'all go out there and buy everything. We want you to buy everything. He was being very self-confident about what he wanted the folks to do and everything like that. So these kids were probably they were one of the poets' niece and nephew and two of their friends. So I'm thinking they were probably preteens and everything like that, but they were definitely very confident about their leadership skills. I just wanted your thoughts, and I would also love to hear from Dr. Silbert about how we can create young leaders.
Sure. So the first thing I would say is kind of my definition of leadership. It's relative. I think it's relative to the situation and relative to kind of the context of what we're talking about. What I found is that many times it is in today's world, we have to distinguish between the hard skills and the soft skills. Yeah. And many times the individuals who you know, to say that cream rises to the top, it's because of their soft skills, right? Mm-hmm. And it's identifying the difference between like management and leadership, right? Sometimes we think because someone's a good manager, they can manage a process, or they can, I hate to say it, from sports, kick a ball or catch a ball or things like that, right? Well, what they've done is manage kind of the hard skills, right? But it's those intangibles and those soft skills with a focus in today's world, much like Dr. Silbert was saying earlier, on how well they communicate. How effective are they as a communicator? Like, think about it, especially in the world of social media that we have today. You have, the attention span has gotten shorter. Our sense of urgency to kind of get what we need, hear what we want. It's that effective communicator that can connect. Those are the individuals whether you're 12 years old, whether you're 18 years old, those are the individuals who are rising to the front and showing up as our leaders of today.
The people skills.
The people skills, those soft skills. Yeah.
No, those people skills are very important because I'm a big fan, not just because it's my alma mater and everything like that, but I like what Shaka Smart has done. I mean, he went to the portal this year and everything, but he creates this environment of, it's not just what we're learning in the basketball game, but it's skills that you will bring with you throughout life. So it's this notion of creating a family environment and everything like that. And that's something that he is very much about and everything like that. So he oftentimes, if you hear him afterwards, he talks about we're creating an environment of like family and everything like that. So that's part of what he does. And I think any good coach, even Coach K here at Duke in the past, and his predecessor, John Shire, and everything have done that. And even some of the coaches at UNC and all along those lines. But I just wanted y'all's thoughts around that, because I know that a lot of times that's what they talk about, is this notion of it's not just the game, but it's also how this game can be carried on further in life and everything like that. So it's basically creating like an environment that will carry you further in life. And that's something that Shaka talks about regularly.
Mark, if I could tag on to that, what you're really saying is, what I heard was, those are the coaches, because a lot of the coaches say that, but the ones that are successful are the ones who can land that message. Right? It's like they connect and they communicate that message with what's actually happening in their program. And that goes back to that effective communicator, that, that executive leadership, the communication that resonates with their team, with the program, with the school, even the fans like yourself.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about, because he oftentimes even talks about Shaka Smart's coaching philosophy, oftentimes our way, centers on 3 core pillars, which I think is something that a lot of teachers can relate to as well and everything, which is this notion of relationships, growth, and victory. So he wants that team first culture over super hyper recruiting, which is why, I mean, he went to the portal this time, but he was really more about relationships first and growth and development and poise and guts and everything like that. So I think that a lot of people don't think about that, because he even did it when he was at VCU as well and everything like that. And even though he got criticized, and I was actually talking about this earlier to Dr. Silbert, because one of my classmates just got let go from Milwaukee and everything like that. But I think in a lot of ways, Doc Rivers, for the most part, had that kind of philosophy as well, where he was trying to create this sense of growth and everything like that. Even some of the players, even when they had bad years, praised his coaching style, because I've even heard the Greek Freak say about how much he enjoyed him as a coach, even though they didn't have the best year this year and all along those lines. But it's that sense of trying to create a relationship and a style of life that can go even beyond your limited playing time. Because if you're in professional basketball, or definitely if you're in high school basketball and pre-high school basketball, your time of making is not going to be that successful and everything like that. I mean, what is the rate? I think it's like 1 out of 1,000 that actually make it into the pros or something like that. It might even be worse than that.
It's it's way less than that. It's like 0.1%, or like 1/10 of 1%. So
right, make it actually to the pros. So if you had that success in high school and college, doesn't mean you're going to have it in the professional level, because it's a very select few that make it. So if you have that sense of learning and all along those lines, that's a positive thing in that way. But did you play sports yourself, LeVar? And I don't know, because like I said, I know that Doc was there in Maywood, and that's actually where he developed his relationships, and even kind of like where he got that notion of being named after Dr. J and everything like that. But I was just wondering if you were a sports person, and what are some of the things that you learned from your sports background, if you were, that you bring into your business world?
Yeah, so it is. I'm one of those guys where it's faith, family, and football. So I played in high school. I played in college. I played actually for Tennessee State University. So I'm a huge football fan, and I coach youth football. I'm a part of. I volunteer my time for Pop Warner. So I love sports. I'm an advocate of sports. And just to tie into what you're saying about how I try to bring it, I try to use it just in life. So my son is playing college ball right now. And what I tell him, the only reason I wanted him to play ball is because I felt he would learn so many life lessons. There's so much that can be learned from sports that can translate to life. How to be a good teammate, back to that communication piece, how to overcome obstacles when, that you're faced with, how to understand, like how important teamwork is, and all of these things that you learn by being on a team and actually being a good teammate. It translates to it translates to everything that you do in life.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything like that. We can wind down in a few minutes and everything along those lines. I know I had told Dr. Tilbert that a while back, but that was before you came up. But I definitely want to give you a chance to talk as well and everything. But before we wind down, there's a question I ask everybody on these shows and everything. But I was curious about, LeVar, how your thoughts around building businesses that actually support your life and not consume it. Because I do think that that's something that unfortunately happens too often in business and in the world. Is people get too swamped in their business that they don't really think about the rest of their life, and they are so dedicated to the business and everything like that that it almost drowns them in the rest of their life. It's that whole infamous thing, and I've talked about it on this show quite often, the work-life balance and everything like that. So I do know that a lot of entrepreneurs have a hard time with that work-life balance because they are so busy wanting to be successful, whether that's being a successful musician if they're into the music business, or being a successful entrepreneurial store owner if they're into the store business, or even a real estate developer like yourself and everything like that. So how do you balance that work-life balance, and what advice do you give to people that they don't get buried in this whole notion of only being dedicated to their entrepreneurial or business life? Because I know that even now you got a lot of people that are slaves to the plantation, meaning they're slaves to whatever job that they're having and everything like that, and they're not necessarily even in the entrepreneurial lane. They're just being worker bees, and they can sometimes be slaves to that as well. So I just wonder, how do we get past that?
Sure. So I really have to salute what Dr. Silbert said earlier. I think it's understanding what our priorities are, and then planning around those priorities. It's the same thing, just like those teenagers that will come to her and the kid that needed an aspirin because his day is so packed. It's like, I think that if we prioritize the quality of our life, right, and then we manage our time well, we actually can achieve many or most of our goals. I think a lot of times we kind of get the business owners I work with, they're so focused on just the business, right? And it's like, and then I hate to say it, but I tell them, I'm like, don't you remember those stories of all those individuals who put everything into that business, and then they looked up, they had lost their family, they had lost their friends, they had lost all of these things, right? I was like, so let's learn from those mistakes, right? Let's prioritize these key relationships in our lives, right? And let's prioritize taking care of ourselves, right? Health, meditation, recovery, all of these things. And what usually happens is, like, if an entrepreneur, a business owner can take the time and do that, their business actually starts to do better. The culture in their organization actually starts to improve, because if that leader, if the one who that at the top of the organization is working like that, it puts pressures on the individuals up under them to do the same thing. And then that has an impact on the culture and the vibe and the energy of that business.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I'm glad you said that, because one of the things that I know one of my coworkers at the Cultural Arts Center I work at, she actually, and I brought this up on last week's online dinner party, she actually has almost like a time limit rule and everything like that. And by that, I mean that she doesn't want any calls that have to do with business after a certain hour, because she needs time to spend with her 3-year-old. She's got a 3-year-old daughter. She's our interim director and everything like that. So she's basically putting a limitation on what people and her accessibility, because sometimes we can make ourselves too accessible. So she's basically like, don't call me after 7:30 unless the building's burning down and everything like that. And unless it's a true emergency, don't call me, because I need this time to deal with my child and everything like that. Because like I said, the child is 3 years old. I think she's 3 going on 35, because she's definitely sometimes feels like she's taking over not only the Haytime business, meaning the 3-year-old, but I personally think that you might be our mayor in our city eventually, because she's really got that kind of spirit and that kind of energy where she's very smart to be a 3-year-old and all along those lines. And she's taking dance classes and everything like that. Because I'm sitting there going like, this is a 3-year-old? She sounds like almost like a 35-year-old and everything like that. But I was just glad that Taryn, that's the young lady's name, that's our interim director, is basically like, don't call me at this certain hour. And I don't think that enough business owners do that, where they give themselves space to have their time, because we need to have our time, even in relationships. I know that my brother and there's this whole notion of the man cave, and yes, even the women's cave as well, where we need to have a space that we can go to that is a place to be away from whatever the dynamics are and everything like that. So I just wondered how important and how do y'all individually find your own time to refresh? You mentioned meditation earlier and everything like that. Maybe there's a place in your house that you go to be away from your sons or kids and your wife and everything like that. Because I do know that my brother has his little man cave area, and he's got his slingshot club that he's part of, which is those fancy cars, the Polaris kind of cars and everything like that. But how do you find this time to express yourself, but also have some time to yourself?
You're asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking both of you.
Okay, I'll begin. Actually, now, I mean, everyone I know is retired. I'm in my 80s, and I just love what I do. And but you have to know, I was always working. I was always running all these things, but my kids were the most important things. My kids were just the world, and they still are. My son, did you ever hear of the TV show American Chopper? It was a motorcycle show. My son was the executive producer.
Oh, wow.
And then, now he gets married, and COVID comes, and they now have 2 little kids. He couldn't, the people from that show, they moved to Florida. They closed the whole show. And he ended up opening an ice cream store. I'm listening to you. And it's called Riverdale. It's the upper part of Manhattan. And so he opened, and he had no idea what to do with it. He got his degree in advertising. He was not the number one student. I used to call him the maitre d' of the lunchroom. And so but this was a kid. So when you have a kid, and I just had to accept who he was, because I was the perfect little student, and my daughter, who became the chemistry professor, he has the same IQ. But he said, I want to go on television. I don't want to do this. He wouldn't take the SATs. And then he went to a 2-year school, and then he transferred, and he ended up at American University. But he just wrote a book I made him write it. I said, I need a funny book for boys around 7th grade, 6th grade. So they won't read. And I want a funny book. And he wrote this book. It's on Amazon. It says Hysterical Burticus, How I Survived School. And it was basically him. Wow. How I survived bullies, how I survived Farley Finnegan, who was the perfect little student. And so what I'm saying is, what did he do by being on television and doing all that stuff? And he lived in LA for 16 years. He gets married, has these 2 little girls. They're 9 and 6 now. He said, I'm not doing this anymore. He said, I can't, because those 2 little girls are the most important things in my life. I've got a wife. I've got this. And so there was a store for rent. And he called and he said, does this sound crazy? I'm going to open an ice cream store, because you can't get that on Amazon. Mm-hmm. I mean, because everything, you have to know what you're selling, because you get shoes, everything on Amazon, but ice cream. But when you said your up nights, oh my God, I don't think he thought, because he went from television and a totally different world, okay, to now he's the ice cream store in town. Everyone knows him. They wrote a whole thing of the whole community. There's this ice cream store. Brian calls it Ice Cream. ICREAM, ice cream. And busy, but the winter came, his first year. The minute that temperature dropped, no one came in the store.
Right.
And it was like, whoa. So the business end of it, I was listening to you. Oh my God, he didn't have anything. He had his degree in advertising. He worked for the Improv doing their advertising when he started. And so totally different world, but it's taking whatever you get into and just knowing you can't spend your whole life doing this one thing. Your family is critical. You wanted a family, That family is critical. Otherwise, remember we talked before and I said their lives, the whole family's happening around them. They're not part of it. They have to make sure everyone is part of it and part of that whole life, and set up time for yourself. So,
Right.
but when I was listening to what you're saying, he said, "Oh my God, I'm up every night," which what did I? And he's loving it. He's loving it. He's having a really good time. But it's wow, it's hard. Running
It
your
is
own.
hard and everything like that. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, LeVar, about how you unwind and everything like that. But I have a friend that's actually an ex and everything like that, but she's now gotten into beekeeping and everything like that. So there's no telling what the profession that may pull you in, because I think she's been working at a winery and was doing some wine work, but now she's getting into this whole notion of being a beekeeper and even trying to buy the bees and do the creation of honey and all along those lines. But this is a career that she's in her early 50s or early to mid 50s and everything like that. It's a new career for her and everything along those lines. So sometimes you don't even know what careers might pull you into them and everything like that. Like you didn't, like your son didn't know he was going to ice cream.
An ice cream store.
And there's a very popular ice cream store here in Durham. There's a couple of them. There's the Parlor and there's Loco Pops. So there's that whole notion of ice cream, even Pelican, which is more of like the ices, can be very popular. But like you said, unfortunately, it's also very seasonal and everything, because he's going to do well now in the summer and in the spring and everything like that. But once fall rolls around, and yes, our winters may be mild in North Carolina, but still, once we get to December, November, nobody's trying to have ice cream and all along those lines. So because it's too cold and everything like that. But surprisingly, there are some people that are so much into ice cream that they will even go to it. So I can't say nobody, because the Local Pops is a year round and everything like that. But I also understand that some of the things won't be as successful. But what are some of the ways that you unwind?
So for me, I got to preface it. I make sure I treat what matters most like it matters most.
Wow.
Right. I think a lot of people don't do that. And I'll give you an example. For me, it's walking. Literally, if I am home, if I'm not traveling for work or business, I walk for 45 minutes every morning. It clears my head. I love the outdoors. I'm so crazy. I even do it when it's 10 degrees outside sometimes, just because it's my ritual. It's just what I love to do. Right. And then I'll give you an example. Like for my wife, we found out she loves traveling. So sometimes, listen to this, when she's stressed, sometimes we have like Metra, that because we live in the suburbs of Chicagoland, it'll take her job is downtown. She gets on the train and it clears her head because she can read her book, and it makes her feel like she's traveling. Right. Because it's like she takes the train. So anything for her that makes her feel like she's traveling, she's going on a trip, it's something new, that's her restart. That's her refresh. For me, it's going out and walking. And now what I would say, I'm going to go back to what I said about making sure what matters most, you treat it like it matters most. I prioritize that walk. She prioritizes getting on that train as long as her schedule permits it. And if she needs a reset, she's like, I'll move a meeting back, and she'll get on that train and clear her head, read her book as she's going into work. So we've learned to kind of, those things that we take for granted sometimes that really help us reset, we actually treat them like they matter for us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm glad you said that, because one of my coworkers, a past coworker, and he's still involved in the arts and everything like that. But Daryl used to do that regularly. He would go because he was done work in like history tours and like trails and all of that. So history trails, and also done work with the Afrofuturism community and all along those lines. But he would take train rides if it was when he was working. I think it was for National Humanities or one of the federal organizations, or it might have been North Carolina and everything like that. But he would take a train ride, and it might be because he's lived in Cary as long as he's been in North Carolina. I think they've always been in Cary and everything like that. But it might be a train ride to Charlotte, or even a train ride from Cary to Durham, which is not that long of a train ride. But that little bit of time, to your wife's point, was a time for him to read books, a time for him to reflect and maybe make phone calls. But it was he didn't have to worry about being in the car and traveling and dealing with the car traffic. But that was his reset time, like whether he was going to a trip, and it might even be when he was doing trips like to other parts of North Carolina, whether it was the mountains of North Carolina or going down to Winston or Greensboro. But he would take the train and everything like that. And at one time, the job even involved him taking the train, and he just loved, like your wife did, that train ride because it was his refresh time. and everything along those lines. So I definitely think you got to have that refreshed moment. I got 3 questions, and that's what we'll use to wrap up everything. And one of them is a question about one of these videos and everything like that. But what is something that people would be surprised to know that have been watching this show for a couple hours now and everything like that, that they didn't learn about you? Maybe it's a hobby. I used to joke with that same ex that I was just talking about this into beekeeping, because she was into skydiving, and I think she tried to get me to go skydiving. To me, planes are for a purpose. They're for going from point A to point B. They're not for falling out of, but that's just me and everything like that. I have thought about possibly doing white rider rafting or some other things that might be equally dangerous or equally exciting and everything like that. But I just couldn't see myself falling out of a plane. Like, I don't mind getting onto a plane to go to New York or to go to Milwaukee or to go to Chicago or to go to LA, which I've never been to yet, but I hope to get there at some point or another. But I don't see myself falling out of a plane. But that's just me. But other people have other hobbies and everything like that. So what's something that is a hobby of yours? You mentioned earlier when we first started, Dr. Linda, you mentioned your husband was going jogging. So we were talking about walking with his wife and everything. So I know he goes jogging. But what's a hobby of yours that people might be surprised at? Like here in Durham, we got a group of young ladies that are quilters. So we have a quilt circle at the Hayti Center that I mentioned about and everything like that. So what's a hobby that folks might be interested to know that you have that they would be like, I didn't know she did that?
Oh my God, that's so, because for me to relax, I basically jigsaw puzzles or crossword puzzles. Love crossword puzzles and love jigsaw puzzles. That's why I said I always have one out. People come in, everyone joins in. I think that's, not traveling. I love what I do. So now I tell everyone I'm retired, because everyone keeps saying to me, oh, when are you going to retire? Everyone is so obsessed with this. And I say, I am retired. They don't know. I work. I'm excited to. I love this stuff. I love being with kids and helping them. But for me, just to calm down, I would put on a movie or something and do a crossword puzzle, jigsaw puzzle. That's it. And my husband's been walking and running since 30 every single day, rain, snow, sleet, every day. So he left.
That's amazing and everything like that. And I am a big crossword puzzle fan as well. I will even sometimes do Wordle or Words with Friends on the computer and everything like that. So I'm a big fan of that, and even some of the strategy games like blocks and things along those lines. But again, and my aunt is in the past, she used to be into jigsaw puzzles. I need to check with her and see if she's still doing those. But yeah, jigsaw puzzles can be real fun. I don't know. And it can be one of those things that can add to like a little bit of the clutter and everything like that. Cause I also like collect the notes as well and everything like that. But another game that is fun that's also on the crossword puzzle, and I haven't done it lately, but I used to really enjoy doing crypto quotes, because you would find out these great quotes from a lot of people that you did not know and everything like that. Some of them are people that are very well known, like the Jeffersons and the Frederick Douglasses, but there are other people that would be part of the fun of it, because you'd be like, who the heck is this person? And why did they come up with this deep quote? So you would also find yourself going down what a friend of mine used to call that rabbit hole of doing research, because he's like, well, not only am I glad that this quote is here because it's a real powerful quote, but now I want to know what made them make the quote. So then you wind up going down that rabbit hole and everything like that. So what about yourself? You mentioned sports earlier, LeVar, and everything like that. So what are some of the things that you do to unwind? Maybe you go play a pickup game of basketball. Maybe you run across Knox Rivers and play a pickup game. Or maybe you like some flag football or some other things, because we just had the women's flag football, Carolina flag football championships this past weekend and everything. Okay. And ironically, we have a team that is contended for the Stanley Cup, even though how Florida teams and North Carolina teams are actually doing well in hockey is beyond me, because these are not winter places and everything like that. But they do a good job of recruiting great players, whether they're from Russia or other places, that are able to bring these championship caliber teams to us. Because we did win a championship, I think it was about 20 years ago, when they first brought the team here to the Carolinas. And I think they're one of the favorites, along with Colorado and Tampa Bay, to be in contention. And right now they're up 2-0. And I think the game is today for game 3. So we'll see if they go up 3-0 and everything like that. But what are some of the ways that you unwind? So for me,
so what I was thinking about, what people might not know, a way that I unwind is swimming. And something else that is kind of fun, my kids get a kick out of it. For the last 3 months, I have been doing a lifeguard training. So yes, and I'm not young, so I'm knocking on 50's door. So they found it hilarious that I was doing all of this swimming to train to take the lifeguard test.
Oh my God, that's great. One of my grandsons is a lifeguard.
Okay.
He finished college, and when he got in, I've got just a quick secret to get into college is the sports and the music.
Mhm.
The other one got a perfect SAT score. And it was very easy for him. His twin brother did well, but every college was calling him because he was the varsity swim, whatever they made him there. And because of that, he was head of the varsity swim team. And so every college was calling because he had the grades and they wanted him in the schools. So he's and I can't swim, so I can't.
No, I can't swim either, and ironically, swimming.
Really?
I do not swim in the least bit. I've lived going down to Miami a couple of times for the film festival, and I love that area. Was just down there last year for a podcasting conference and everything like that. So I love being on the water. I don't mind sticking my foot in the water and everything like that. Another ex took me on a cruise that was about right at the beginning of right before the pandemic, so like early 2020 and everything like that. And I just remember even going on that cruise, I loved the cruise environment. I loved the food because there's great food on cruises. I love the activities and even going to some of the things that were out there, whether that was a concert in Puerto Rico or whether that was a going to like a pirates area and all along those lines. So I love the different things that were involved. But I was also, even when I walked around the ship, going like, if I fall, I'm in deep trouble because I don't know how to swim and I don't know where the boat is and everything like that. So fortunately, I did not fall. So I'm still here and everything like that. But I was worried about that because I am not a swimmer at all. But ironically, to your point, LeVar, of how important swimming can be, my dad has had different health elements. He's actually dealing with some hard stuff over the last couple of years and everything like that. But when he first got older and everything like that, I want to say maybe in his 60s or 70s, so close to my age and everything like that, and he was having problems with his leg because he was an active tennis player as a youngster, actually played against Arthur Ashe when they were both kids and everything like that. But when he first got involved, he couldn't do the physical activities that he used to, and swimming became part of his physical therapy and part of his health journey and everything like that. So swimming is very much an important part of people's health journeys as well. So that can be something that goes on that way, because he's still an avid swimmer, still very active in the YMCA and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big fan of swimming, even though I can't swim. Maybe I'll learn that when I'm in my 60s or 70s, because I also believe you can learn skills later in life and everything like that. The other thing that was good to get both of you to answer and everything is one of the things I do on this show, and both of you know because I've sent you copies of past shows, is I am a big believer in positivity, and we've been having some very positive conversations today and everything like that. But this is a global network, so if you can give a message of positivity to our global audience and all along those lines, I would love to hear that, and also how you can be reached and everything like that. So I'll start with you, Lyndon, and I also want to hear from LeVar as well, and then I'll close out with a video, and that'll be the last question because it has to do with something we've been talking about, which is education and everything like that. But if you can tell folks how they can reach you and all along those lines, and any message of positivity that you want to share with our global audience, because we do have listeners in Australia and Bangladesh, because some of them are also our guests. That's why I know that they exist and everything, and places that haven't been guests like China and Russia. I have various African countries like Kenya, Tanzania, because they sometimes will show up on our different ways that we show where we're being heard at and everything. So, and I know we also got listeners in Canada and the various states in the United States and everything like that. So any message of positivity that y'all would like to share, and how you can be reached, and also how they can purchase your book, in your case, Dr. Silbert. So if you'll share that, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Wow. Universal positivity. Believe in yourself and respect others. Believe in yourself and respect others, and they'll learn to respect you. If you have, I always tell a story about it, a king that's walking down the street, and his two sons are next to him, and it starts to rain, and he puts up umbrellas over their heads. And someone says, they should be putting the umbrella over your head. You're the king. He said, I'm their father. How are they going to learn about respect if I don't respect them first? No. So just respect your neighbors, and that's I actually have it in my book, that story also. And my book is here, and you can reach it just Amazon. Go straight to Amazon. Why Good Kids Get Bad Grades. And you also can reach me at stronglearning.com. That's where all my games are. Playing. So kids can, and the kid who's reading and loves to read, it's fine. But the kid who's struggling, you've got to get that anxiety down. You've got to get that focus up. And what is better to do with a child than to play? That's where they are. They're children. So stronglearning.com. And that's the best way. Yeah.
I appreciate that, everything. LeVar,
Thank you.
how you can be reached and your message of positivity as well, and all along those lines, and how you can be reached both for the investment company and any other websites that you want to share as well.
Sure, definitely. So I want to start with the piece of positivity. So many times, especially early when I first got out of college, I realized that I went through some ups and downs and some roller coasters. And one of my mentors told me, he said, listen, he said, regardless of what's going on today, 5 years from now, these will still be the good old days. And it has never not happened, right? It's like I look back and, we were going through, my partner and I, we were talking about everything that was going on during COVID, right? And, there was some really kind of messed up stuff that happened. But then we realized what we talked about afterwards was kind of how people came together. And how we learned so much about ourselves and when we were stuck in the houses with our family members, and we learned things about our significant others. And we talked about, those times, and it was like, man, regardless of what's going on today, 5 years from now, these will still be the good old days. So that's my positive thought. And to reach me, for anything kind of real estate investment, it's rosieinvestment.com. And for any business owners that are out there, you can reach out to kynconsulting.org. I have a lot of free resources that talk about quality of life as a business owner. There's also an assessment that you can take to maybe figure out how much your business is stressing you out, and maybe some things that you can do to implement in your business to be more successful and have a better quality of life.
I appreciate that. Like I said, the last question I was going to ask you about education is I am a big supporter, and I kind of mentioned it earlier because my mother was a guidance counselor when I was an infant, and all along those lines, I've got aunts that were teachers or in the library field. Grandma was a librarian and everything like that. So there's a group of folks from Oklahoma that over the years have been doing these awards that support teachers, but also the support staff, because I'm a big believer that the support staff is also important. And by the support staff, I also mean the resource officers, which can be part of security, the guidance counselor, the cafeteria worker, which my grandmother on my mom's side was as well, because nutrition is an important part of what kids go through as well and everything like that. And also some of the people that we don't think about as being part of the support staff, but they know more sometimes about the whole school environment than anybody does, which is the janitor, because the janitor is a person that is part of the support staff that we oftentimes don't give credit to, but the janitor is also an important part of the school support system, not just for cleaning up the mess, whatever that mess might be, whether it's in the bathroom or whatever else, but a lot of times they know a lot of the history, just like the secretaries do in the school as well, that you don't ignore like we're talking about, don't ignore the tradespeople, don't ignore the support staff in your schools either, and everything like that. So before I play this video, and that'll be the video to get us out of here, what are some of the teachers or support staff that meant a lot to you? Maybe it was a cafeteria worker like my grandmother, or maybe it was somebody that was a janitor, or maybe it was an actual teacher, because I mentioned earlier some stories of some funny moments in my own school, and particularly in high school and everything like that. But who were some of the teachers that impacted you, or some of the support staff? And I'll go backwards. I'll start with you, LeVar, and then in with you, Dr. Silbert, and then I'll play the video. But who were some of the support staff that impacted you?
Sure. Support staff or teachers? Because
both.
The one,
both.
Yeah. Okay. So I have shouted him out on so many interviews or podcasts, and it is the individual who sent me down the path of real estate. It was my first real estate professor, Dr. Pennington. He changed my life. He changed my life. It's like and it was funny. It was an exercise he gave us. He gave us an exercise the first day in class, in our appraisal class, about 500 things that you want in life, and he tied it back to real estate. So Dr. Pennington, amazing professor at Tennessee State University. He truly changed the trajectory of my life.
Yeah. Any support staff, like whether it was a cafeteria worker or a coach or a janitor or anybody like that, even in your high school years?
Yeah, so it was a janitor at my high school. I learned more from the janitor at my high school than I probably did from any of the teachers at high school. And it was because I was like the last person to leave the locker room after sports and always hanging around, things like that. And he would just simply talk to me about life. So he reminded me of my granddad, and he just had so much wisdom.
Yeah. What about you, Dr. Silver?
I'm sitting here struggling because I never realized there was one teacher. She was an education professor. I remember she was a retired superintendent of schools. I remember her during those days. Remember that cigarette commercial? It's what's up front that counts. Because I was in college during the 60s. And I just remember her saying, it's what's up front that counts. You will be the teachers. And that I remember just sitting and listening to that, how important that was. And I wanted this my whole life, to be a teacher. And so I have to just bring in my husband, which was so interesting. He had no clue what he was going to major in. And we're taking physics freshman year. You mentioned physics. And he had 100 average. And we'd been in these lecture halls with 200 people, and everyone would say, that's your boyfriend. And he would be raising his hand, and I'm sitting going, I didn't even know what they were talking about in physics. And I remember the professor coming up to myself and this girl, and we're trying to do the experiment. We said, it's not working. And he said, you did not plug it in. Little tiny minds. And that's how I remember him walking away. He's kept going, little tiny minds. And I was with my husband. We met at 17, first class. And it was somebody who was the head of the physics department went and called him in and said to him, you're going to major in physics. And he said, really? He said, if you didn't pick a major yet, I mean, anyone had 100 average in physics. I mean, they were so thrilled in the 1960s. And so it just changed our lives because of that one professor. And he said to him, and he said, okay, then that's what he ended up in. But I was trying to think of other people. I think it was more the relatives. As I said, I was the latchkey kid, and I was with his uncle and the whole family, and just being with everybody.
No, and latchkey kids are very important and everything like that. Because even as you were talking about physics, I was thinking about, we just had the Artemis go through space, and they're going to be trying to have another one in 2028 and everything like that. And a lot of those folks have talked about the importance of physics, but they've also talked about the importance of education. I think the African-American astronaut that was on this trip talked about how much he realized how connected the world was and everything like that. I think I saw some interviews where he was talking about it, just because seeing that great big marble, the way that Carl Sagan used to talk about it and everything like that, that he got a sense of the greatness of the world and the vastness of the world as well, and everything like that, and how we're all interconnected and don't need to be paying attention to a lot of these differences, whether it's around gender or ethnicity and religion and a number of other things. So I just remember that part of his quote, and I'm definitely a fan of space, even space exploration, being a fan of the old days of the old science fiction movies and all along those lines. So definitely I can relate to that. And in my own teachers, there were a couple of teachers that I remember. I mentioned one of them, the drama teacher and everything like that, but there were also teachers that had like contrasting styles and all along those lines. Because I had George Reedy, who, if anybody knows about LBJ and the great president, George Reedy was his press secretary. So I had him as one of my professors and all along those lines. But there was another professor at Marquette that I had as well, and that was I cannot remember her name, but she got us to go out and actually do on the field reporting. So even though it was a journalism class, she had us incorporate some of our creative writing skills in that class as well. And I wish I could think of that teacher's name, because I actually got to Marquette because of a family connection, Howard Fuller, who is a big advocate of charter schools and all along those lines, and was involved with my parents when they had both the Malcolm X school and other schools here, including the getting a African-American studies department at Duke when they took over the Allen building. And he was involved with those young students back in the, I think that was in the 70s and all along those lines. These are late 60s or early 70s in that space. But he's how I got to Marquette, because I knew I wanted to go into journalism at a young age, either that or being a weatherman. Yes, I thought about being a weatherman at one point as well, but I knew I wanted to do one of those. I even had the whole weather vane and the Farmer's Almanac and stuff to get you into weather, but I was more interested in journalism, partially because of Watergate, partially being a big fan of Hunter S. Thompson and gonzo journalism and all kinds of things like that, where you can engage yourself in the journalism story. And I'm definitely a fan of 60 Minutes and a lot of other things, including Charles Kuralt and folks that had ties to North Carolina. But I did not have, as I mentioned earlier, the best of grades and everything like that. So UNC basically said, no, your grades are not what we're looking for. In retrospect, and you mentioned going to Tennessee State, I could have gone to Central as a legacy student because of having connections, but I'm not even sure they have legacy programs now at Central and all along those lines. But if they had a legacy one, my granddad, the biology building is named after him. Grandma has ties there. I think both parents went there at one point or another. So I probably could have gone to Central, but they didn't have a media department at the time. They have a great media department now, but they did not have it at that particular time. So at that time, they were asking me, well, we can get you to Marquette and all along those lines. Howard's a family friend, so we can get you in through the EOP program, which is people that either had bad grades or had financial difficulties, or in some cases both, which would have been my case, and all along those lines. So that's how I got to Marquette through Howard Fuller, who is very much into charter schools and charter education and is a big time proponent of that even to this day. And just really quickly before I play this video, the other thing that I remember as an education, and it showed me how you can have different styles and it can actually balance out what you're going, is I had a religious professor. Because if you go to Marquette, you wind up having two minors. They don't make them officially two minors, but it will be two minors, because you get whatever you decide to minor at, which in my case was poli-sci with a journalism major and everything. But you also have to take 12 hours of, I may have them backwards. It's either 12 hours of philosophy and 9 hours of theology, or vice versa. I think it's 12 hours of theology and 9 hours of philosophy. But if you add that up, that's 21 hours. 21 hours to me equals a minor. So you might as well call it a minor in religious studies, because it is a Jesuit university. And I think that was for everybody, at least back in the 80s when I was in school. I think that's still the rule and everything like that, because I'm part of the Alumni Association. So I need to, with the alumni group, so I need to check with them. But I know that was the rule back then. But I had one professor that was very much a fan of C.S. Lewis and the Screwtape Letters and all along those lines. So anybody that knows religion has heard of the Screwtape Letters, but he was super conservative. I had another professor, and I think that was Dr. McGuire, who was more into liberation theology, which is using theology to make change in society and everything like that. So I had like a super liberal and a super conservative professor, and I managed to do decent grades in both of them and all along those lines. But they were definitely that wide spectrum in the philosophy thoughts and everything like that. So we're just interested in that, having that kind of background in that education. But I would never trade my liberal arts education, because I do think the Marquette School and liberal arts is important for all of us to have and everything like that. So I would never trade that kind of education that I got for anything, because I think that it has served me well in these many decades that I've been involved in media and in cultural arts and all along those lines. So on that note, I'm gonna play this video. I hope that y'all will enjoy it, and then I'll click the end button and everything like that. But any final thoughts before I hit the button? And this can be for either of you and all along those lines. But I thoroughly enjoyed both of you being on. Hopefully I'll get you on other shows as well. But this is the Online Dinner Party, where I bring you on sometimes two, sometimes one, sometimes the most I think has been 5 or 6. But I try to bring in people from different backgrounds, and we do just like we did today. We kind of like have engaging conversation where we're learning from each other and going back and forth, because it's what I envision this kind of environment being. And I've been doing this with Pod TV now for about 5 years. So we're learning from each other and also developing new friendships.
Thank you so much. It's been delightful. Thank you. Nice meeting you, LeVar.
Yeah, same here, Dr. Silver. Great meeting you, and I'm actually really interested in the title of the book. I love that title.
Why good kids get bad grades.
Bad grades, yeah.
Yep.
I love that as well.
Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I said that was the last question. LeVar, are you going to write any books before, or have you got any books in your mind? Dr. Silver's already written a book. I've been part of a book. It was part of an anthology of books, and ironically, it was about the Soul family. And a friend of mine that used to do a LinkedIn event, I think it was Shout Out Saturday and What's Up Wednesdays. He's written several books, that being Brian Shulman, but he had me write a chapter. So I've actually been featured in 2 books. One of these interviews was turned into a book that was by the artist Van Dorn Kennett when I interviewed him. And then they had me write a chapter. And my chapter was about the Soul family. And the Soul family is this notion that we've been talking about family in general, but it's not always our birth family. It's also people that we are connected to. And that's what my particular chapter was. It's how these people that were not my birth family are also an important part of my life and everything like that. So that was my particular chapter.
Yeah. So it's funny that you asked that, because I'm actually getting the itch to write a book. So I might have to come back on once I've got it finished to talk about it.
I look forward to it. So we'll get you back on after the book is done and all like that. So I'm gonna play this video and get us on out of here. This was a very fun conversation, and we've got other shows coming up, including Follow the Brand, which is a show about branding that I believe the gentleman is back home in Omaha, but he was living in Florida. But Grant McGaugh does that show every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. So he'll be coming in, bringing that show up in about 30 minutes. Actually, I've got to download it and make sure it's up and ready to run at about 7 o'clock. But that's his show. It's at the 7 o'clock hour. But right now, let's get on out of here. This has been a fun conversation, and I hope to see both of you in the near future, maybe even in real life and all along those lines, and not just in the virtual world of StreamYard. But definitely, it's been fun, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
All right.
Thank you.
I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop. I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop.
I want to thank everyone for coming to the 2020 TAF Awards. This was a show like no other, people. This is the Grammys for dignitaries, educators, and support staff around the state of Oklahoma and worldwide. We cannot do this without the support of the people. So we thank you, I thank you, for being such a dedicated supporter to this movement for the Teachers Appreciation Foundation. I thank you.
I won't fold.